In the hot tub, did the defendant make some statements that were of interest in this case?
Yes.
What were those?
Judge. Objection, motion in limine.
Approach.
I'm not sure where she's going, so I don't want...
It's good to clarify as well. The motion in limine covers specifically him hearing this from Wendi. Is he going to testify to hearing this firsthand?
Yes. That's the question.
Going to hear what firsthand?
What Charlie said in the hot tub.
About what? Because he said a lot of things we get in the sex stuff.
No.
About what questions and what are you talking about?
About the Hispanic criminal element.
Oh, that Charlie said about the Hispanic criminal element.
Yes.
God bless. Listen, I don't want to miss trial.
Lower your blood pressure. We're good.
I'll ask a more leading question.
Good morning, everyone can be seated. How are the jurors doing with the potty situation?
Significantly better than they have previous days.
That's what we like to hear. Right, is Miss Adelson present?
Yeah, I saw her in the hallway.
Right, if someone can bring her in so she can take the witness box.
Judge, would you like me at the podium now, or?
You can wait. For everyone in the gallery, once again, if you were not present yesterday, so you understand the instruction, once the testimony has begun, if you leave the courtroom, you will not be readmitted until the witness completes their testimony. Please also silence your phones.
Judge, may we approach before we get started?
Yes.
Oh, I don't know.
Go ahead.
Ms. Adelson's attorney has advised me this morning that because I had her put her phone number on the record yesterday, she's been getting blown up on her cell phone, which was not my intent. And I don't know what good it will do, but at their request, I said I would ask you to seal the number from the record whenever it's transcribed and made public, so I'll move to do that at this time orally if you'll accept it.
That's fine. Does defense have any position concerning this?
No.
Very brief, very succinct. Perfect answer. All right. Lower 10's motion to seal will be granted concerning the telephone number of Ms. Adelson.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Everything's okay.
You want her on the stand, Judge?
Yes. Morning. You won't have to be sworn again. You remain under oath. Let's bring in the jurors. Better take this cough drop while I have the chance. Ms. Dugan's concerned about my voice.
Judge, can you run a...
Yes, go ahead.
All right, Drew.
One minute.
There was some information provided that blocking the jury's selection, but we're not.
Okay.
Especially.
All right, Hamlin, hit her on the radio. Now it's real. Yes.
All right, we're doing it again, guys. All right, Drew. Forward.
Everyone can be seated. Good morning, members of the jury.
Good morning.
We are going to resume with the cross-examination of Ms. Adelson at this time. Mr. Rauschbaum, you may examine when you're ready.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning.
Good morning.
So I want to go back to your staying in Tallahassee after the relocation motion was denied, okay? You understood that you couldn't leave Tallahassee after it was denied, right?
That's right.
And so you decided to build a life here with your boys, right?
I mean, I had been building a life here for 7 years before that, but to continue with my life, yes.
You had a large circle of friends.
I did, yeah.
You were in a book club.
I was.
In fact, on July 1, 2014, just 17 days before the murder that the state thinks you participated in, you recall that you were excited that a friend of yours was moving to Tallahassee?
I do.
You remember that friend's name? I can refresh your memory if you need it.
Well, I think Renee Griggs was planning on moving to Tallahassee.
May I approach, Your Honor?
You may.
I'm showing you for identification purposes only, defense exhibit. Is that your email?
Yes, that's my email.
And is that your email with Ms. Briggs?
Yes, it is.
Judge, I'm offering to evidence right now. Defense exhibit 3.
Any objection from the state?
Hearsay, Your Honor.
What is the exception that you're offering this under?
State of mind.
Please provide it to the court. The objection is sustained. However, the witness may testify to her memory concerning this issue.
You learned on July 1 that your friend Ms. Griggs was moving to Tallahassee, right?
Well, I learned she was interviewing for a job in Tallahassee.
And you thought that was a dream come true, right?
I was really excited about it.
Why was it a dream come true?
To be able to be with her all the time would be fantastic.
You were dating men that lived in Tallahassee, right?
I was.
One of those men was Jeff Lacasse.
That's right.
We'll talk about him a little more later, but you dated him the end of 2013 through June, July 2014.
That's right.
And after you broke up with him, you recall joining a couple date sites?
I did.
Websites? Dating websites?
Yes.
Do you recall setting up dates for the week or so after July 18th?
I did.
Do you recall having emails with individuals setting up those dates?
I do.
Do you recall setting up those dates on July 16th, 2014 for 2 weeks later?
That sounds right.
Do you recall setting up dates on July 17th for around 2 weeks later?
That sounds right.
Now, yesterday, Ms. Kappelman talked about a house you did not buy in 2013. You recall that testimony?
I do.
Let's now talk about 2014. In the spring and summer of 2014, you were working with a local realtor to buy a house in Tallahassee, right?
I was.
I'm showing you what's marked as Defense Exhibits 6 and 7.
You may.
Do you recall in April of 2014 looking at a property on Beard Street?
I do.
Do you recall in June of 2014 looking at 40 open houses that are available in Tallahassee?
I do.
And there are these exhibits and evidence.
Response?
Hearsay, Your Honor.
Let me look at the exhibits. With the exception you're offering them under once again.
State of mind, rehabilitation.
Exhibit 6 will be admitted. Exhibit 7, and I believe, is this all of Exhibit 7, or is this 7 and 8?
All of these.
6 is admitted, 7 is not. The objection is sustained as to 7.
May I publish, Your Honor?
You may.
Here.
Was Jay Depart Frog Realty your broker?
He was a different realtor I was using. I used a couple different people, but I heard he was good, so I had reached out to him about this particular property.
And that was in April 25th, 2014.
That's right.
And that's about 4 weeks before the first attempted murder in June, correct?
I don't know about the first attempted murder.
And if you weren't able to buy, you were going to rent, right?
I would have continued renting.
Do you recall speaking to a Leslie Andrews on July 7th about a rental?
I don't remember Leslie Andrews, but it sounds, I mean, I had a main real estate person I worked with, so she would have been maybe someone who had a property I was interested in, but I don't remember.
You remember something called the Tallahassee Center?
I don't.
Judge, may I approach with Defense Exhibit 8 for identification purposes only?
You may.
And see if this refreshes your recollection that you were looking to rent a one-bedroom lease, and this is from July, this email from July 7th, 2014.
But you said I was looking to rent a one-bedroom, and she offers me a one-bedroom, but I say I need something bigger, right? So that doesn't work.
Nonetheless, you were looking to rent, you were in the rental market just 11 days before the murder occurred, right?
That's right.
In July of 2014, you planned for the boys to attend school in Tallahassee in the fall, right?
We were trying to figure out which school our older son would go to, and our younger son probably would have kept going to the same preschool.
In fact, you and Professor Markel were arguing about that, right?
We hadn't come to a decision yet, but
You wanted the boys to go to, I think they call it SAS.
we had put our older son in the lottery, and he got pulled for it, and so we were exploring it as an option.
And that was the lottery for the school year 2014 and 2015.
Right.
So you didn't expect him to go to school in Miami.
No.
May I have one moment, Your Honor?
Go ahead.
Now, in early 2013, you were appointed a clinical professor by the FSU faculty,
That's right.
and you were continuing to handle immigration and disability cases around Tallahassee,
That's right.
and you had plans to teach at the law school in the fall of 2014?
Yes.
Fall of 2014 meaning after the murder, after when your ex-husband was murdered, correct?
Correct.
You were talking to research assistants about working with you, right?
Yeah.
Do you recall speaking to a research assistant about working for you possibly in the fall of 2014?
Sure, that sounds right.
Do you recall Z. Nolan?
Mm-hmm. I do.
And you offered them a job in the summer and they couldn't take it? And you said, well, come back to me in the fall. Do you recall that?
I do.
And in the spring of 2014, well, let me back up. You authored a book, correct?
I did.
In the spring of 2014, your book was selected by FSU for what was called the One Book, One Campus event, right?
That's right.
That means that your book was going to be required reading for all incoming freshmen at FSU.
That's right.
And that means that we're talking about the incoming freshmen after the summer of 2014, right?
I was supposed to speak at convocation in August.
Let's talk about that in a second. But before we get there, that was a big honor for you, right?
It was the highlight of my career.
And you were very excited about it.
I was super excited.
You were going to be the keynote speaker at the FSU convocation on August 24th, 2014, correct?
That's right.
You told your friends and family about it.
I did. I probably told everyone.
You told your parents about it for sure.
I did.
And you told Charlie about it.
I'm sure I did, yeah.
I'm going to show you Defense Exhibit 12 and 13. Take a look at these and let me know if you recognize it. Let me know if it's your email.
This is my email.
You recognize these items?
I do.
Judge, I move defense exhibit 12 and 13 into evidence.
Any objection?
Can I see this item, please?
Yeah.
Well, I think that's 12. I think this is 13.
Hearsay and relevant.
Please approach.
State of mind. Rehabilitation.
Sustained on grounds of relevance.
Judge, may we do a sidebar, please?
You may.
Go ahead.
Judge, the state's whole theory of this case is that my client did this so that his sister could relocate. These are emails that show that my client was planning on attending an event in Tallahassee in August 2014, that she was excited about that event, that none of these alleged co-conspirators had any idea that she was going to be relocating, that they were excited to be here for this event. It goes to the heart of showing how their case doesn't make any sense.
And she has testified as to such. I'll agree it shows her state of mind at the time, but ultimately the relevance of this being, now that she has confirmed this through her testimony, why is this relevant still?
Because it shows that her mother, her father, and her brother were going to come to Tallahassee in August of 2014 to watch her.
Right. As to that point, you certainly can question her as to her memory on the documents and convocation and speaking about the book, but she's given her direct testimony. This becomes cumulative rather than she can't recall it or she doesn't know her state of mind at the time.
Okay, I'll just ask the question then.
Go ahead.
You may continue.
Do you recall that your parents and Charlie were quite excited to come watch you in Tallahassee at this event in August?
Yes.
Do you recall your brother saying he couldn't wait to book a ticket, that it was fucking awesome?
Yeah. He was very excited.
Do you recall discussing with Professor Markel who would have custody of the boys during various trips in August and September of 2014?
Yes.
Do you recall having those discussions in July of 2014?
That would make sense, yeah.
Do you recall scheduling a whole host of meetings after July 18th, 2014?
Yes.
Let me be more precise. Before July 18, 2014, do you recall scheduling a bunch of meetings that were to occur after July 18, 2014 in Tallahassee?
Yes.
Do you recall making plans with a friend moving to Tallahassee for July 25th, 2014?
I don't.
Let me see if I can refresh your memory. Do you know an individual named Tahira Lee?
I do.
May I approach Your Honor with Defense Exhibit 15? And I would direct you to the email on June 17th, 2014, which I think is the fourth email on the first page, and see if that refreshes your memory. But feel free to look at the whole document.
I see it, but you were asking if they were moving to Tallahassee on the 25th, or if I...
No.
No.
Did
you yourself, Ms. Adelson, don't read aloud.
Okay, sorry.
I'll repeat the question.
Okay.
Do you recall making plans with her where you said you would make plans with her after August 25th, 2014, because your family was coming to town?
Yes.
And that happened, that correspondence was in late June of 2014?
Yes.
Do you recall in June, you can put that aside now.
Okay.
Do you recall in June of 2014, late June of 2014, expressing interest in joining the board of a Tallahassee-based child advocacy nonprofit called American Children's Campaign?
I do.
That was in Tallahassee, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do you recall scheduling a meeting for July 23rd, 2014, with a Professor Van Dern with the FSU College of Medicine?
So I don't, but I ran a medical legal partnership, so I would have been setting up meetings with the medical school, with the law school, with the social work school, so that would have been normal, but I don't remember it specifically.
May I approach, Your Honor? Does this refresh your recollection that you were scheduling a meeting with Professor Van Dern for July 23rd of 2014?
Yes.
Do you recall you can put that aside.
Okay.
Do you recall scheduling a meeting with your divorce lawyer to meet any time of the week of July 21, 2014?
Again, I don't remember specifically, but it sounds like it would have made sense for the time.
Do you know an individual named Cindy Jean?
I do.
Do you remember emailing her and asking her if the kids were available to go swimming at the pool on July 19th to 20th?
I don't remember, but it sounds like something I would have asked.
May I approach, Your Honor, with Defense Exhibit 20 for identification purposes only?
You may.
Does this refresh your memory about trying to set up that play date for July 20th or July 19th with Miss Jean?
Yes.
You can put that aside. Do you recall that your mom planned to visit Tallahassee in November of 2014?
I don't remember that.
I'm showing, may I approach, Your Honor, with Defense Exhibit 21 for identification purposes only?
You may.
Please take a look at this.
Yes.
Does this refresh your memory that your parents planned on being in Tallahassee on November 17th? Does that
Yes.
refresh your memory? You can put that aside. Do you recall asking your parents to come to Tallahassee on August 1, 2014 for a birthday party with Ben, for Ben?
I don't remember doing that, but that sounds, it's close in time to his birthday.
May I approach your honor with Defense Exhibit 22? Does this refresh your recollection that you were going to have a birthday party for Ben in Tallahassee in early August of 2014?
That's right.
You can put that aside. And that your parents were going to come up for that?
Mm-hmm.
Do you recall making flight reservations to travel to Newark and then back to Tallahassee? So you're going to leave from Tallahassee and go to Newark, come back to Tallahassee for a wedding in October 2014.
I do.
And you made those reservations in July of 2014. Do you recall that?
I don't recall when I made the reservation, but I remember the wedding.
May I approach your honor with Defense Exhibit 23? Does this refresh your recollection that the reservation was made sometime around July 14th, 2014?
Yes.
That you were booking tickets for a wedding in New Jersey on October 24th, 2014?
Yes.
And the cost of those tickets were over $400, right?
That's right.
You put that aside. Those tickets weren't to go back to Miami, were they?
No, it was Tallahassee to Newark, Newark to Tallahassee.
Why did you make those tickets to go back to Tallahassee?
That is where I lived.
We're going to move on to another subject. Ms. Kappelman talked a little bit yesterday about the litigation that occurred after the relocation litigation with Professor Markel. You recall that?
I do.
And there were these pieces of litigation back and forth about money and about filing false affidavits. You remember those?
Yes.
It was what was called the motion against your mom that Professor Markel filed. You recall that, right?
I do.
Okay. With regards to the motion that Professor Markel filed claiming that you and your attorney filed a false affidavit, did you get the sense that you were going to prevail on that litigation?
Yes.
Was the judge getting frustrated with Professor Markel on that litigation?
Very.
Did the judge admonish Professor Markel regarding that litigation?
The judge said he needed to stop.
Were you concerned about getting disbarred?
No.
I want to talk a little bit about Jeff Lacasse. You first met Mr. Lacasse in the fall of 2013.
Yes.
It was casual at first.
It was.
You were dating other people as well.
I was.
It got more serious around March of 2014.
That's right.
Fair to say he was in love with you?
I don't really remember. I don't think I could say, but it was more serious.
Okay. You weren't so sure about him. Is that fair to say?
I think my feelings developed over time.
And then they undeveloped?
And then they undeveloped.
You were very different people from very different backgrounds, right?
Yeah.
He didn't spend much time with your parents, right?
I think maybe he met them once.
He wanted to meet them more than once, right? He didn't like that he didn't get to see them more times.
I think he wanted to be more integrated into my life.
Jeff Lacasse met Charlie Adelson one time in March of 2014, right?
That's right.
He accompanied you on a trip with law students, right?
I used to run an alternative spring break, and he came with me.
And you decided to come down to South Florida for a day or two, right?
That's right.
And you had dinner at a place called Yardbird, right?
That's right.
Are you aware that that happened on March 11th, 2014?
No, I don't remember the date, just that it was during the spring break.
Fair enough. You remember sitting outside on the patio?
I do.
And it was you and Mr. Lacasse and Charlie and a woman named Katherine Magbanua. Do you recall that?
That's right.
Who was Charlie's girlfriend at the time.
Yes.
Are you aware that Sigfredo Garcia was watching you at that dinner?
No.
Are you aware that he was contemplating running your brother over with his car at that dinner?
No.
After dinner, you and Jeff Lacasse stayed at Charlie's house, right?
We did.
Miss Magbanua wasn't there, right?
I don't remember her being there.
It was just the three of you.
I think so.
And you left the next morning.
We did.
Now, you and Mr. Lacasse started having issues around May of 2014. Is that fair to say?
That sounds about right.
You started to become nervous around him?
I don't really remember if I was nervous around him, but I started thinking it wasn't the right relationship.
He started accusing you of being unfaithful, right?
He did.
He accused you of having an affair with someone that you had previously dated?
He did.
Excuse me. You told him that you didn't. You denied it.
That's right.
And he didn't believe you.
He did not.
And before this individual that you used to date, you had coffee with at a place called All Saints in Tallahassee, right?
I did.
And Mr. Lacasse saw you having coffee with this individual, right?
He did.
And that caused a confrontation. Is that fair to say?
He flew into a rage.
Subsequently, he went through your phone and planner, right?
He did.
And this is around May, June of 2014?
That sounds right.
And you and Mr. Lacasse went to Gainesville for a weekend for his work at some point around this time frame.
Yes.
And that Saturday night, June 28th, he basically exploded at you.
He did.
He yelled at you for hours.
He did.
He accused you of having affairs with multiple people.
He did.
You were very upset, to say the least.
I was devastated. Yep.
Now, you were scheduled to leave for South Florida, I believe it was on June 30th or June 29th to celebrate your dad's 70th birthday, right?
That sounds right.
And Mr. Lacasse wasn't invited.
No.
You went down to South Florida on June 30th, and you and the boys stayed with your parents, right?
We did.
You had the boys with you the whole time.
Yes.
Dan Markel didn't have the boys at that point in time. The boys were with you.
Yes.
And Charlie knew that, right?
Yes, he was with us.
Your mom planned a big party for the birthday.
She did.
Now, I think when Miss Kappelman asked you if the birthday fell on a Saturday, you weren't sure.
I remembered it being on his actual birthday, which I thought was a Saturday, but I don't remember the calendar from 2014.
May I approach Your Honor with Defendant's Exhibit 25? Ms. Adelson, does this refresh your recollection that July 5th, 2014 was on a Saturday?
Yes.
And that the party was at 7:30 p.m. or
Yes.
thereabouts?
Mhm.
Put that aside. Now, when you got back to Tallahassee, you saw Mr. Lacasse on July 13th,
That sounds right.
and when you saw him, it was not a good meeting. Is that fair to say? It's uncomfortable.
Yeah.
You saw him the next day at a yoga studio,
I went to yoga and he wanted to come.
and it was awkward
It was.
and kind of tense.
It was.
And he asked to see you again later that week,
He did.
and you didn't want to.
I did not.
And when you got home that night, you sent him an email asking him not to contact you for at least 7 days, that you wanted to think things over. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
You never saw him again, right?
No?
Are you now aware that there was a first attempt on your ex-husband's life on June 4th and June 4th, 5th of 2014?
Yes.
When you lived with Professor Markel on Trescott, was your address publicly listed?
I believe so.
May I have one moment, Your Honor? Judge, at this point in time, we'd ask a stipulation be read into evidence.
Which stipulation?
The stipulation regarding the drop-off pickup schedule for the Markel children.
Very well.
Do you need a copy, Your Honor?
I have it right here. I'm just bringing up instruction 2.3. Members of the jury, when the parties agree that certain facts are true, that is called a stipulation of fact. You must accept stipulated facts as having been proven. However, the significance of these facts, as with all facts, is for you to decide. In this case, the stipulated facts that you must accept are true are: the Markel children were enrolled at Creative Preschool located in Tallahassee. During the week of July 14th, 2024, their drop-off pickup schedule was as follows. Monday, July 14th, 2024, dropped off at 8:55 a.m. by Dan Markel, picked up at 5 p.m. by Dan Markel. Tuesday, July 15th, 2014, dropped off at 8:25 a.m. by Dan Markel, picked up at 4:50 p.m. by Dan Markel. Wednesday, July 16th, 2014, dropped off at 9 a.m. by Dan Markel, picked up at 4:30 p.m. by Wendi Adelson. Thursday, July 17th, 2014, dropped off at 8:30 a.m. by Wendi Adelson, picked up at 4:45 p.m. by Dan Markel. Friday, July 18th, 2014, dropped off at 8:50 a.m. by Dan Markel.
Thank you, Your Honor. So I want to first focus your attention on the July 17, 2014 schedule. On July 17, 2014, as Your Honor just recited, do you recall dropping the kids off at school at 8:30 in the morning?
Yes.
And Professor Markel picked them up at 4:45 p.m. on that day, thereabouts.
Which I just heard, but I wouldn't have known what time.
You didn't pick them up that day.
No, it wasn't my day.
So it would be impossible, the person would be wrong if they said that they saw you and the kids by Professor Markel's house in the afternoon or morning of July 17, 2014, correct?
It would be some other woman and some other kids.
You spoke to your mom probably close to daily, right?
Yeah.
During this time period. She would know when you had the kids and didn't have the kids, right?
Probably.
Now I want to go back to something briefly that we talked about yesterday before we stopped. You knew that Professor Markel posted his travel plans on Facebook and on his prof's blog, right?
Yes.
He would talk about places and conferences that he was speaking at, right?
He would.
Are you aware that on the weekend of the 20th, he was supposed to speak at a conference in New Jersey, and he posted it on Prof's blog as well as on Facebook?
Yes.
Let's talk a little bit about Best Buy. May I approach, Your Honor?
You may.
I'm showing you what's marked for identification purposes only as Defense Exhibit 29 and 30. Looking at Defense Exhibit 29, does that refresh your recollection that the warranty was under your father's name for
Yes.
that TV?
Mm-hmm.
A warranty with the Geek Squad?
Yes.
Now, before you look at Exhibit 20, do you recall that your mother scheduled the appointment for the TV to be fixed with this Geek Squad?
I remember that I scheduled it, but it looks like she scheduled it and gave me the number to call in case I needed to reschedule it.
And in fact, she emailed you on July 11th and told you if you can't keep the appointment on the 18th, call this number to reschedule it, right?
Yes.
You can put that aside. I want to talk a little bit more about July 18th. Do you recall leaving your house that day on Aqua Ridge Ray around 12:30 in the afternoon?
I do.
And you were going to meet a friend for lunch at a place called Mosaic.
Yes.
But you had to pick up a bottle of, I don't know if it's bourbon or whiskey. I don't even know if they're the same things, but Bullet whiskey.
It was bourbon.
Okay. It was for your friend's wedding shower that night?
They were having us stock the bar party, so they asked for specific kinds of alcohol to stock the bar.
And I'm showing you what's marked as Defense Exhibit 32. Is this the invitation that you received?
Yes, that's it.
Judge, I would move Defense Exhibit 32 into evidence at this point in time.
Any objection?
Hearsay, Your Honor.
Exception?
State of mind.
You can provide me with the exhibit.
I'm going to show right-hand corner. Let me show the right-hand corner of the exhibit.
The objection is sustained. She may testify as to remember.
Do you recall on the left-hand corner of the invitation, it says, help the bride and groom stock the bar for their wedding and bring a bottle of Bullet bourbon? Do you recall that?
Yes.
You can put that aside. Now, you decided to go to ABC Liquors on Bedden Road to look for the bourbon, right?
I did.
Okay. You're not a big drinker, is that fair to say?
That is fair to say.
You went to that store because you were familiar with it?
I'd seen it close to my house, so
Close to your old house?
close to my old house.
There could have been liquor stores that were closer to your current house?
Sure.
Now, when you drove to ABC Liquor, you tried to go through Trescott. Is
I
that
did.
fair to say?
It was blocked.
There are other ways to go to ABC Liquor, right? You could have gone down other roads.
I don't have the best sense of direction, so when I find a route, I just kind of keep using that route. I don't look for something else.
Okay. You got to Mosaic at around 1 p.m.
That sounds right.
and your lunch was interrupted by Investigator Isom, who told you that something had happened.
That's right.
You went with him voluntarily to speak
did.
with him? You let police search your car? the investigator from approximately 2:45 p.m. until 7:50 p.m.?
Yes.
He told you that your ex-husband had been shot and was unlikely to survive, right?
Yes.
You were in shock.
Yes.
You were pretty open with police, telling them a lot of things, right?
They kept telling me they needed my help, and so I kept trying to help.
Now, you remember on direct, Ms. Kappelman asked you about this interview.
Yes.
And she asked you about all the people you mentioned during the interview, including Charlie.
Yes.
And you said I was just wheeling off names, right?
Yes.
In fact, isn't the first person in the interview that you mentioned was yourself?
Yes.
You said that you would understand if you were viewed as the prime suspect, right?
Yes.
Before you mentioned anyone else, you mentioned yourself.
Yes.
You told them about the motion to relocate.
I did.
You told them about the fight you had with Professor Markel that very morning about some swimming for the boys.
Yes.
You were spitting out a lot of ideas.
I was.
And you agreed to let the police search your phone.
Yes.
You agreed to let the police search your car.
Yes.
That's where they found that picture that I wasn't able to admit of the invitation of the Bull of Bourbon, right?
Yeah.
You agreed to be fingerprinted.
Yes.
You agreed to be checked for gunshot residue.
Yes.
You gave them your computer to be searched.
I did.
Towards the end of your interview, you asked the police officer if you could call your parents, right?
I did.
And the police allowed you to do that.
Yes.
And you called your mother's cell phone sometime around 7:04 p.m.
Yes.
And you spoke to your mom. I don't know if you remember, but you remember your dad being in the shower because they were going out to dinner.
I don't remember.
Your mom didn't answer, actually, the first call, and you called back a couple minutes later and she answered. Do you recall that?
I don't.
And when you called your mom, she was surprised.
Yes.
And you asked her to call Charlie and tell him what happened, right?
Yes.
You didn't speak with Charlie that day, right?
I don't think so.
On July 19th, the next day, you spoke to Charlie at 10:50 in the morning. Is that, you won't know the exact time, but do you recall speaking with him in the morning?
I honestly don't.
Do you recall letting him know that Professor Markel had passed away in the early morning?
I don't remember the conversation.
When your parents came directly to Tallahassee, correct?
They did.
They stopped in Orlando and they got there on the morning of the 19th, right?
Yes.
And when they got there, they were scared and frantic, right?
Yes.
Your dad didn't sleep. He couldn't get police protection, so he planted his chair in the front of your window to make sure that no one was going to come to your house and shoot it up, right?
Correct.
Now, you all attended a memorial service on the 20th, right?
Yes.
And you arranged for the Markels to see the boys after the memorial service, right?
They all came over my house.
And you left Tallahassee, correct?
Not on the 20th. No.
On the 21st.
Yes.
And when you left Tallahassee on the 21st, did you bring all your belongings?
I brought some swimsuits for the boys and some pajamas, and I thought we'd be back in a day or two.
And when you left, you were not yourself.
I was a mess.
You got to South Florida and you realized that you could not take care of the boys alone at this point in time.
I hadn't slept in days and I was terrified.
To get a little more specific, you wouldn't leave the house.
No.
And you would hardly eat.
I wasn't eating, no.
And ultimately, you decided not to come back to Tallahassee.
I mean, I made that decision much later, but
And you had a friend who you grew up with, I think last name Keener, go back and get more stuff at your house, right?
he did.
You have one more moment, Your Honor. Now, it's been said in this courtroom that you have tried to erase Professor Markel's memory from your boy's life. Is that true?
It's not true.
For the first 2 years after the murder, did you limit Professor Markel's family from seeing the boys?
Absolutely not.
In fact, they had complete access to the boys, right?
100%.
They made dinners with the boys.
I cooked dinner for them, yes, every time they visited.
There were sleepovers and playdates.
That's right.
There was no animosity at all, right?
No.
And then in October of 2016, things changed, right?
Yes.
A letter was released where there was a suggestion that Professor Markel's mom was talking to the state about arranging custody for the boys in case you got arrested.
Yes.
And you saw that as a betrayal.
Well, the custody was foster care, so yes.
You saw that as her thinking that you killed her son.
Yes.
And as a result of that, rightly or wrongly, you decided to limit their access.
I was afraid they were going to put my children in foster care.
Do your children know anything about their father?
They know a lot about their dad.
Do they have a picture of him in their bedroom?
Each boy has a picture of them and their dad over their bed that we say good morning to and good night to every day.
Did you benefit from Professor Markel's death?
No.
Well, you got to live in South Florida.
It's not a benefit.
How are your boys doing?
They're doing very well, thank you.
How has your job prospects been since this case hit the news?
Objection, relevance.
Sustained.
How are you doing?
Objection, relevance.
Sustained.
Has this affected your life negatively or positively?
Negatively.
Does Charlie love his nephews?
Very much.
May I have one moment, Your Honor? Thank you, Ms. Adelson. I have no further questions.
Redirect examination.
The long list of plans that you went over with Mr. Rashbaum that you were going to have in Tallahassee post-murder date, none of those plans happened, right?
No,
Because you moved to South Florida, right?
because I felt unsafe to stay here, yes.
And did you feel safe in South Florida?
No,
Did you buy a house in Tallahassee after the murder?
no, I did not.
Did you rent a house in Tallahassee after the murder?
No, I didn't live in Tallahassee after the murder.
Did the boys go to school that fall here in Tallahassee?
No, all our plans were broken.
And what was the purpose of those questions? Of course you didn't. You moved to South Florida. You didn't have plans in Tallahassee that got executed. Why were you asked about all those things?
I don't know why I was asked questions by the defense counsel.
The book event that you were asked about, did that event happen?
I didn't speak at the event, but the event still happened.
Have you had several events related to that book that have happened?
I have.
And what events were those?
Do you mean just in Tallahassee or do you mean in other places?
Everywhere.
I've spoken at various schools about human trafficking and about my book. I think there was one event that still happened in Tallahassee about a year later.
And is that the only book you've written, or have you written more than one book?
I've only written one book.
What was the book about?
The book was about human trafficking and about the vulnerabilities that lead to trafficking, the problems when it occurs, and basically how to recover from it after.
Where was the book set?
It was set in a fictional town.
What was the name of the fictional town?
Hiawassee Springs.
So Hiawassee. Is it located in the panhandle of Florida?
No, I used to see the name when I was driving from Tallahassee to Orlando, so it's somewhere in between.
And was the place modeled after Tallahassee?
It was definitely somewhere in Florida, but not supposed to be about Tallahassee, no.
Who was the central character in that book?
So there's three central characters. One was one of my clients, kind of a composite character from Eastern Europe. One was kind of a composite character of many clients I've represented from Latin America. And one was a public interest lawyer.
And was the public interest lawyer Lily?
Yes.
And is that the character that was sort of based after yourself?
No, really more based after a friend of mine.
And was Hiawassee, Florida, quote, just a small stop on the way back to what we had previously known as civilization? Is that a quote from your book?
That sounds like a quote from my book, yeah.
And who's the husband of Lily, the public interest lawyer?
You want his name in the book?
Yes.
I think it was Josh Stone.
All right, and what was Josh's employment?
Josh was an English professor.
I'm sorry, what was your answer?
Josh was an English professor.
A professor, where did he teach?
It's been a while. I wrote the book over 10 years ago. I don't remember what I named the university in the
North Florida State University?
That sounds right.
NFSU?
NFSU sounds right, yeah.
All right, and in the book, does Lily lament, quote, we moved to this godforsaken place for Josh's career?
Yes, that sounds like a line Lily would say.
All right. When you looked at page 187 of the divorce document on Cross, and I'll hand that back to you. This is actually my copy. see the quote that you read previously from that page?
I don't.
It had to do with, let's see if I can find it, that you were very unhappy in the marriage. I think it's the third paragraph there.
I see that line.
Okay, the wife has been very unhappy in the marriage and files her petition for dissolution of marriage in August 2012. The husband continues to characterize this as abandonment, and then it goes on to say that he had been disparaging you to some of the folks at the law school. Do you remember reading that?
I do.
Was that intended to be the place in this binder where you allege emotional abuse by your husband?
I mean, I think it's emotionally abusive to suggest somebody has mental health issues.
Okay. What is the Prof's blog? You were asked about that on Cross.
Yeah, it was a blog that Danny started with some of his colleagues to kind of promote community in the law professor world.
And who reads the Prof's?
Probably
Prof's blog?
other law professors and people interested in becoming law professors.
Who is on the Crim Prof listserv?
I don't know.
Were you on the listserv for that Prof's blog?
I may have been on the listserv at some point.
Do you remember seeing the post that you were shown on Cross?
I do.
And the post says something about Danny and I are planning to attend a conference that will begin Sunday, July 20th. Is there any other information on what you were shown about Dan's travel plans post-murder other than that?
I'm sorry, can you please repeat the question?
The post says, Danny and I guess it's another professor writing this thing. Danny and I are planning to attend a conference that will begin Sunday, July 20th. Is that the type of information that he would typically have on something like the Prof's blog or Facebook?
That sounds right.
Okay, but as far as the date he's leaving, the flight he's on, that kind of stuff, would that typically be on the Prof's blog?
He wouldn't put what flight number he was on, but he would almost always communicate when he was going on a trip.
Okay, so going to a conference that starts July 20th might be an example.
Flying to New York tomorrow would be an example.
Okay.
But
he didn't
not
put
a flight number.
But he didn't put flying to New York tomorrow on this occasion.
No.
You were referenced several times, not on direct examination by the state, but by your brother's attorney on Cross as a co-conspirator. Are you charged in this case?
No.
This isn't your trial, is it?
No.
Is your brother charged with conspiring with you to do a murder?
No.
Is he charged with conspiring with you to plan a murder?
No.
Is he charged with soliciting you to do a murder?
No.
Who is he charged with doing those things with?
I don't think anyone.
Have you had an opportunity to review his indictment in this case?
I have not.
I'll give you an opportunity to take a look at that document to yourself. Who is your brother alleged to have done these crimes with?
Katherine Magbanua.
Were you on the wire in this case, Ms. Adelson?
No.
So when the bump happened, are you familiar with the event I'm referencing as the bump?
I am now.
When law enforcement approached your mother on the street and handed her a piece of paper?
Yes.
Okay, when that occurred, who did your mother call?
I don't know.
Not you, right?
Not me.
Okay. And once your brother found out about the bump, did he call you about it?
No.
Who did he call?
I don't know.
Well, you listened to the calls to authenticate the voices, didn't you?
Just to hear the voices, not to hear the content of the calls.
Okay. And the voices were your brother's voice, right?
But I listened to the calls just to hear who was on them, so I don't know what content they're referencing.
I heard your answer. My question to you now is, your brother's voice was on the calls.
He was on some of the calls I listened to.
Your mother's voice was on the calls.
She was on some of the calls I listened to.
Did you have any secret meetings with your brother post bump that happened in South Florida?
No.
You were asked about Jeffrey Lacasse and the way that your relationship ended. What is OkCupid?
OkCupid is a dating website.
Were you on that dating website?
I was.
Were you on that dating website at the time that you were dating Mr. Lacasse?
No, I wasn't.
And were you speaking, so I guess you weren't on it, you weren't speaking to multiple men from the website during the time you were dating Mr. Lacasse. And I'll remind you that you provided your phone in this case and it was cell-brighted, downloaded.
Objection, Your Honor. Argument.
Approach.
Concerning this line of questioning, Mr. Rauschbaum, you did go down the doorway of who she was speaking with and whether there were allegations of infidelity. I wasn't exactly sure why you were going down this path, but it has been inquired into.
I don't have a problem with the questions, with the line of questions. I have a problem with, before she answers the question, her saying, I'll remind you, we have Cellbrite data. That's argument. She had let her answer the question, and then she started attacking her. That's why I objected.
Ms. Keppelman.
No response.
Very well. As to that, the witness being reminded of the evidence that has been collected, you're saying that's improper argument?
Yeah.
Or it's improper impeachment?
She hasn't even answered the question to impeach yet.
Very well, Ms. Keppelman, please give her an opportunity to respond first.
Yes, sir.
Argument that is denied as to improper impeachment is sustained. The jury is to disregard the last comment from the prosecutor. Go ahead.
Didn't you just say that you weren't on OkCupid at the time that you were dating Jeffrey Lacasse?
I don't know when we say I officially stopped dating Jeff Lacasse, but there's a chance that, I don't remember in 2014 whether I had gotten the app and started talking to people before we officially broke up.
Okay, so my point is there's a chance that he was right. You were being unfaithful, or at least talking to other people. He had a reason to be jealous.
I think he had some serious jealousy issues that may or may not have been founded.
Yeah, I think we got from your testimony that you believe he had serious jealousy issues. My question to you is, did he have a reason to be?
No.
So he was wrong.
He was wrong in June when he accused me of being with multiple people that I wasn't with, yes.
Okay. What was wrong with Dan's mother trying to make arrangements for the kids in the event of your arrest? Wasn't that a kind thing to do?
I don't think it's kind to put my children in foster care.
Wasn't the foster care intended only to cover the time frame that it would take for her to get on a plane and get here?
She never said that.
You thought she was just going to leave them in foster care?
I didn't know what to think. They have a mother. They don't need to be in foster care.
But they wouldn't have a mother in the event of your arrest, Ms. Adelson. Wasn't that the intention of the email?
I don't know what the intent of the email was. I was not going to be arrested for a crime I didn't commit.
She didn't know that, though, did she?
I don't know what she knows or doesn't know. I can't speak to that.
Do Dan's parents know whether you committed this crime or not?
I don't know how to answer that question.
How would they? Particularly back at the time that she sent that email. It was fresh at that time, right?
I'm sorry, what was fresh?
All the events that were occurring, the arrests.
That was 2 years after Danny's murder. I don't know what she knew or didn't know. I know that my children don't belong in foster care.
Was it a specific foster care that she was requesting be called in the event that the children had no place to go and were going to be going into the custody of the state?
She did suggest a specific foster care agency,
A Jewish-run foster care agency.
a Jewish foster care.
How many times have the kids visited Dan's parents since this murder?
Many. It'd be hard to count.
Countless times?
Countless times.
How many times have they seen him in the last year?
We had a visit with Danny's dad and the boy's cousin this summer. We've had a lot of Skype visits. They do live in Canada, so it makes it a little bit harder to have in-person visitation. But every time they've asked for it, we've arranged it.
Every time they've asked for a visit, you've arranged it.
Yes, ma'am.
How many times have they seen him in the last 5 years?
Again,
Countless?
As in the last 5 years, that overlaps with the time when they tried to put them in foster care. So since we've reestablished relations, we've seen them about twice a year whenever they come down to Florida.
So in the last 5 years, they've seen him how many times? 2 or 3 times a year?
About that.
Has this been a major issue between you and Dan Markel's parents? This issue of them having access to the kids?
The issue of them trying to put them in foster care is a major issue.
No, ma'am, that's
yes.
not my question.
I'm sorry.
Hasn't the issue of them trying to get access to your kids been a major issue? At least for them.
Since they tried to put the children in foster care, yes. Before that, it was not a problem.
Are you familiar with their work across the street at the legislature trying to get bills passed to give grandparents rights to see kids?
I'm familiar with their grandparents' legislation, but it's actually unconstitutional.
Okay. Are you mad? Are you angry that according to your brother's theory, he and your mom have known who killed your children's father since 2014, and you weren't told who it was?
I'm more angry that somebody killed my children's father.
So you're not mad about that they knew this whole time? That's what they're saying.
I'm sorry, can you repeat the
That's
question?
the theory of the defense in this case, is that he's known the whole time. Your brother's known what happened to Dan. Does that make you angry?
I'm angry about so many things, it's hard
Is
to
that one of them?
separate them.
We'll try.
I'm confused. It's hard to process.
And apparently, according to his lawyer, these killers had threatened to kill your brother's family members as well. Did you hear that?
I did hear that.
And that would be you, right?
It would.
Were you told that a specific threat had been made by the same people that had killed your ex-husband to kill your brother's family members?
I was not told.
Would that have been information you would have liked to know back in 2014?
Yes.
Would you have made the same decision to move down to South Florida, closer to the killers?
No, I would not.
And even after the killers were arrested in 2016, you weren't told that that's what was going on the whole time.
I found out yesterday.
No further questions.
Members of the jury are being instructed to disregard the comment of the witness as to the constitutionality of any portion of the Florida statutes. You may step down. Will Ms. Adelson be recalled at any point? Looking to both of you. Will she be recalled at any point?
That's possible, Judge. I'd ask that she remain under the rule, but she's free to go about her business.
Have a good day, ma'am. Please call your next witness.
May I have a moment to see who's out there, Judge?
Go ahead.
Who is it?
Break. We'll take a 10-minute recess until 10:15.
Face down on your chairs, guys. Thank you.
Judge, are we still on the record?
If there's something that you need to address, go ahead, yes.
But before, not the next witness, I believe, but the next two witnesses, we're just going to need to go sidebar at your leisure to discuss a couple issues. So just giving you a heads up.
Let's go ahead and approach now while they're doing their break.
Okay. So, Judge, I don't know the order of the witnesses, but I think Mr. Rivera is going to testify today at some point. Given our theory of defense, which you've heard in opening now, I'm going to need to ask him a couple questions about his affiliation with the Latin Kings. It goes to the heart of our defense. It goes to the heart of the threat on Mr. Adelson's life. It will not be many questions. I know that you always look at me when I say that with skepticism.
We're going to need to proffer this, but yes, go ahead.
But the questions will generally be, were you a member of the Latin Kings? Were you the head of the South Florida unit of the Latin Kings? Is that a violent gang? That's essentially it.
And I assume you're asking this as it goes to the credibility of the extortion plot that you're alleging.
Correct.
Ms. Kaplan.
I guess I'll maintain my objection to relevance. It just feels like there needs to be some basis first about some evidence of the plot before the legitimacy of the plot can become relevant.
If this were a prosecution, I might agree. However, this is a part of the defense's case. Again, we're going to need to go through a proffer specifically with Mr. Rivera on this point as it relates to any crimes that he's committed that are separate and apart from the defense that you're raising as a member of the Latin Kings. That's still off limits altogether. But specifically as it relates to this, we're going to need to take the proffer from there. Whether or not this continues to remain a feature of the trial going into closing, I think goes to what Ms. Kaplan is raising about what else is going to firm this up.
It will, as an officer of the court, it will be firmed up.
Very well. Anything else?
Yes. Well, yes. So, with regards to Mr. Lacasse, who's also going to be testifying today, I just want to confirm that there's not going to be double hearsay testimony allowed in per our motion in limine regarding Mr. Lacasse's testimony.
Ms. Kaplan?
Don't intend to introduce double hearsay unless I have an exception for both layers.
So
I think this is settled.
Okay, just double checking.
All right. As to the court's last direction to the jury to disregard the opinion on the Florida statutes, I think it's fairly clear the witness is not qualified to provide any opinion on constitutionality. I know it was not objected to, however, I don't think I could really let it lie.
Fair enough.
Everyone can be seated. Are the jurors ready?
Jeffrey Lacasse.
please.
Please raise your right hand, sir. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth? Yes. You may take your seat.
Please introduce yourself and spell your name.
My name's Jeffrey Lacasse. Sorry. Jeffrey
How are you employed, sir?
I'm an associate professor at Florida State University.
How long have you been with FSU?
I came back in 2013. I was also there from 2000 to 2008.
Have you always lived in Tallahassee?
No, I'm from California originally. I went to Phoenix for 5 years from 2008 to 2013. Really loved Tallahassee, so when I got a tenure track job here, I was excited to return in fall of 2013.
Did you have a relationship at some point with Wendi Adelson?
I did.
What was that relationship?
We met in the fall of 2013. Apologize for my voice. Let me just get a little water.
You can have water.
We started dating in the fall of 2013, September 2013. We dated casually in the fall and more seriously in the spring and summer of 2014.
When did the relationship end?
Well, that's a little tricky, but basically July of 2014.
All right, we'll walk through that a little more
Yeah.
in detail. During the time that you were dating Ms. Adelson,
Someone's either breathing on my
Is that me?
or very close to
I don't know, maybe we need to move it. Is it okay if I touch the microphone, or you want me to?
Is this about the right distance here?
I'm not sure, is he, but
Last
just
time-
back it up a hair. I know,
Okay.
it's hard to get right.
Maybe if you speak up, they'll just help the issue.
Yes, sir.
All right, so during the time that you were together, did you become aware of Wendi Adelson's recent divorce from Dan Markel?
I did. On our first several dates, that was the primary topic of conversation.
And were you aware that this was an unusually nasty divorce?
Yes.
During the time that you were dating her, did you become aware that even subsequent to the divorce there was ongoing litigation?
Yes.
Did you know Dan Markel?
I met Professor Markel. I did not know him. I probably spent 10, 15 minutes in his presence across the course of that relationship.
And were you specifically familiar with the litigation concerning Wendi Adelson relocating with her children to South Florida?
Yes, that was a topic of conversation, for sure.
If you know, did Wendi want that relocation to take place?
Yes, on our second date, the topic of relocation and being stuck in Tallahassee came up, and the date was ended abruptly when she went to the bathroom, returned with tears in her eyes, and just left the date because she was so upset. That was about two and a half months after it was denied.
All right.
And it continued to be a topic, but that's the
But
most-
that issue seemed to be specifically what was upsetting her on that day.
definitely was. She left a group date suddenly because it came up.
All right. And did she have family in South Florida?
Yes.
And what family was that?
Well, her brother, Charlie Adelson, Harvey Adelson, her father, and Donna Adelson, her mother, were the ones primarily that I heard about.
Were you also familiar with the litigation seeking to limit the exposure of Wendi Adelson's young sons to her mom, Donna Adelson?
Yes, in spring of 2014, yes.
And did you observe Wendi to be taking that filing seriously? Did she seem stressed or worried about it?
Every filing she took seriously, and she was stressed. I had reported to TPD that every time a motion was filed, it affected our relationship because she's very upset.
During the time that you were in a relationship with Wendi, did you have an occasion to meet her family members in South Florida?
I did. Well, I met her parents mostly up here. So I met Donna and Harvey Adelson probably 8 to 12 times up here. I met the defendant down in South Florida one time.
All right, so you only met Charlie Adelson one time.
That's correct.
When was that?
That was the evening of March 11th, 2014.
And had you already met the parents several times at that point?
Yes, probably 6, 8 times at that point, maybe more.
So they came here quite frequently.
Yes.
What about Katherine Magbanua? Did you meet her?
She was present at the dinner that I attended on March 11th, where it was myself, the defendant, Wendi Adelson, and her went to dinner that evening, March 11th.
You're saying the defendant. Do you see the person in the courtroom
Yes,
that you had dinner with? Who's that?
that is Charles Adelson, known to me as Charlie.
Could you point him out and describe what he's wearing?
Yeah, he's sitting in the center of the defense table, wearing a light blue tie and a navy blue sports coat.
All right. And so Katherine Magbanua, how was she related to this family or affiliated with the family?
I was introduced to her as Charlie's new girlfriend, essentially.
And was it your understanding that this was the first time that Wendi was meeting Katherine Magbanua as well?
That was my understanding. She was excited about Katherine Magbanua, and that was my impression, yes.
All right, so anything unusual happen at the dinner?
Well, at the dinner, Miss Magbanua mentioned that she had I guess it was her ex-common law husband, who had a criminal history that sounded very serious, and I did raise my eyebrows at that.
Did Charlie Adelson seem disturbed or upset by Katherine Magbanua mentioning that?
I don't recall him seeming disturbed, no.
All right, what about after dinner? Where did you go next?
We went to Mr. Adelson's home, and we sat in his hot tub and had a few drinks and talked for a little while.
Who's the we that sat in the hot tub?
Yeah, myself, Wendi Adelson, Charles Adelson was in the hot tub for a while, and his then roommate, Dr. Jerome Obed.
All right, so Dr. Obed was living with Charlie Adelson at that time?
That was my understanding. It was his roommate, yeah.
All right, and where was Katherine Magbanua at that time?
She did not accompany us back to the house.
In the hot tub, did the defendant make some statements that were of interest in this case?
Yes.
What were those?
Judge, objection, motion in limine.
Approach.
I'm not sure where she's going, so I don't want...
It's good to clarify as well. The motion in limine covers specifically him hearing this from Wendi. Is he going to testify to hearing this firsthand?
Yes. That's the question.
Going to hear what firsthand?
What Charlie said in the hot tub.
About what? Because he said a lot of things we get the sex stuff.
No.
About what questions and what are you talking about?
About this manic criminal element.
Oh, that Charlie said about this criminal element.
Yes.
God bless. Listen, I don't want to miss trial.
Lower your blood pressure. We're good.
I'll ask a more leading question.
Is the objection withdrawn?
It's withdrawn.
May continue.
Let me ask a more specific question. Adelson in the hot tub mention anything about having connections to a criminal element?
Yes, he did. He mentioned having contacts on both sides of the tracks, meaning dentists, lawyers, professional class people, but he also had people he knew that were a criminal element, yes.
And did you get more specific about anything about these people that are the criminal element?
He mentioned specifically, I repeated it to TPD, about Cuban neighborhoods where you might find that criminal element.
Okay, so he had connections to those type of people.
That's what he said,
And
yes.
what was the context of this? Was he just seemed scared about it, worried about it, or something else?
Seemed to be bragging.
I want to ask you about a meeting with Wendi at a coffee shop that occurred on June 4th, 2014. Do you recall that?
I do.
What happened at the coffee shop?
We went to the Red Eye Coffee Shop to have coffee, just to meet midday, and Miss Adelson canceled a trip that we had planned for July 11th to 17th to go see my parents, which was a big deal in the relationship, and she abruptly canceled it.
Did she offer an explanation as to why she needed to cancel the trip?
not one that made sense. She said that she feared that we would not get back in time, and she emphasized, had to be back on the 18th to pick the kids up out of school, which would have been July 18th, 5 p.m., is my understanding. And I couldn't fathom why in the summer going through Atlanta you wouldn't be able to get back in time. It didn't make any sense to me.
So she was worried you could be delayed and she wouldn't be able to pick the kids up.
Right, and we had people who could babysit. It didn't make any sense at all, but that was what she said. That day was very important.
All right, and so that occurred on June 4th.
It did.
All right, did you see her later that evening?
I did. I went to the house to hang out with her and her children.
And is that her residence on Aqua Ridge?
Yes, ma'am.
And how was she that night? This is June 4th, right?
It is.
Okay.
She was a nervous wreck to the point where she was sick to her stomach. Asked me to get to her house as soon as possible. She was in that much distress. And she didn't have food poisoning or flu or anything obvious. She was just a nervous wreck. So I went to her house, immediately went to the store to get her Pepto-Bismol and a couple of things from the convenience store. I have the credit card receipt, is why I recall that so specifically.
And did you have any idea why she's acting? I assume this is unusual for her.
It was fairly unusual. The degree of severity was definitely unusual. But that whole week, June 4th to 9th, she was very nervous. So.
And she didn't tell you it was because killers were in Tallahassee to kill Dan Markel, did she?
No, I was stunned to later find out that there was hitmen in town at the time.
Okay. So let's go forward a little bit to this TV situation. Do you know anything about Wendy's TV being broken?
I do.
And when was the TV broken, if you know?
Between June 11th and 18th, I think it's closer to the 11th, but 100% in that week.
And how do you know it was in that week?
Because we rented a movie, How to Train a Dragon 2, to give the kids a special movie night, and I have text messages where I'm discussing having seen the movie by the 18th with friends.
So you were able to refresh your memory?
Yeah, I was able to
by
refresh
going through
my
those?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so do you get the movie, or?
Well, it was back in the day. It was Redbox, so I rented a DVD from a Redbox. It was 2014.
All right, and go over there with the movie and what happens when you arrive.
I walk in the door, and Miss Adelson asked me to look at her television because there's something wrong with the television.
And what was wrong with the television?
Well, I turned it on, and I was immediately confused because it really shouldn't have been a question. As soon as you turn the TV on, it's been struck by an object and is damaged and basically unusable.
Can you explain what the damage looked like?
Yeah, it looked like somebody stood in front of it, took their fist, and hit it like that, was my first impression.
So kind of like a shatter mark with spiders?
Yeah, there's like an impact crater, and then there's, out from that, and it's all pixelated and distorted, which makes it very difficult, or really no one would watch this TV unless you had to. And I had second thoughts about that. I looked around the room. Maybe the kids broke it, so I looked all around the room, and it didn't seem plausible that the children broke it. They're very small. This object had to be kind of heavy. I'd thrown a ball around with them. I just couldn't see how the kids could have done it.
But you didn't see how it got busted?
I didn't see it. I didn't know for sure, and I didn't know we'd be discussing this in a murder trial, so I didn't investigate further or think about it very much, to be honest with you. I just thought, okay.
Were there other TVs in the house?
There was a TV in the back bedroom, a similar make and model, that we had watched television with the kids before on that TV before, so yes.
Is that where you watched the movie that night?
No, I went to go hook up the DVD player in the back room. Miss Adelson insisted that it would not work and actually stopped me from even trying. So thought that was very odd, but I didn't want to argue, and it's her house, her TV, her kids, so I said, okay.
So did you watch the movie on the broken TV?
Yeah, we gave the kids movie night where we watched a movie on a broken television that was distorted enough that you could follow what was happening, but the kids are whining and crying the whole time. And I wasn't whining or crying exactly, but I was tempted to because it was pretty frustrating, and I just didn't understand, what was going on. And of course, I had related that this TV's broken, it's unwatchable, it's not covered by warranty, you're going to have to get a new TV. And I offered to go do that for her anytime she wanted. She's a busy single mom. I'll run by Best Buy, get you a new TV. It was not like a 80-inch TV or something that was really that luxurious. It was a TV like you'd see in a dorm room, so we could have replaced it right away.
All right, did you end up getting a new TV?
No, she turned me down several times on that offer, and again, it's her house. I tried to respect her boundaries, and I said, oh, okay. But it was inconvenient because after dinner, it's nice to be able to put the kids in front of that TV while you clean up the dishes and stuff. And it sat there being an inconvenience for a while.
All right. I want to ask you about when is Ms. Adelson's birthday?
April 22nd.
Okay.
Earth Day.
I've got this out of order. Let's skip over that for now and go to the big fight in June. Ms. Adelson mentioned that there was a big fight toward the end of June. Do you recall that?
Yeah, that's the weekend in June, 27th, 28th.
Where were you when that fight occurred?
We were in Gainesville. Miss Adelson accompanied me for a work trip, and we had that scheduled for a while. And she accompanied me on a work trip, and we ended up having a pretty big argument Saturday night in the hotel.
And did that have to do with you accusing her of seeing other men?
That was one of the issues. There'd been a lot of tension bubbling. That was the major issue. But just to give that some context, I suspected very strongly she was seeing other men. Of course, your office had confirmed recently to me that there was multiple online active dating accounts the whole time we were supposed to be exclusive. But just to give context to that, that was combined with Wendi promising me the world in June. Talking about me moving in, shouldn't get a Jeep, you should get a car, the kids' car seats will fit in. The kids should start calling you daddy was the most outrageous one and so she's like throwing herself at me over the top in a way that felt totally disingenuous and fake. And at the same time, I think she's seeing other guys. So it just kind of boiled over. I tried to have like a serious, honest relationship conversation with her, and that didn't go very well.
So you were kind of, at least up until all of this started happening, you were kind of full steam ahead, and it seems like she was a little stop and go, hot and cold. Is that
It was accurate? A roller coaster, is what I would say. And I had felt since April that I was perhaps being strung along. I had that intuition. I couldn't fathom a reason why you would string a guy along like that. It didn't make any sense at the time.
All right, so we're in June, like 28th range.
Okay.
Okay, when do you come back from Gainesville?
The morning of the 29th, after this fight or this argument, we drive back. We drive back to Tallahassee. Now, I had another ride back, and I offered to take that other ride if the fight was that bad, because we could have broken up after this. That was, but she wanted to ride back with me.
You rode together?
Yeah, we rode together.
All right, so you rode back together, and then was she leaving that day?
I believe it was I thought she picked up the kids the next day from Professor Markel's house, and that's when she met Amy Adler, and that was a big deal to her.
Amy Adler was Dan's girlfriend at the time?
Yes.
Okay, so it's at some point after the big fight and the return from Gainesville, does she leave to go to South Florida?
Yeah. A day or two later, she definitely leaves to return to South Florida. She's in South Florida by July 1.
All right, and was that the trip that she was there for her dad's birthday?
That's correct.
Did you attend the dad's birthday?
No, I was never invited to the dad's birthday.
All right, and were you aware what the big gift was for dad's birthday?
No.
All right, so when did you see Wendi next after she leaves to go to South, or I guess after you return from Gainesville?
So during that 2-week period, we're exchanging emails, texts, long phone calls, video chats with the kids. Things are up and down, but it seemed like it's probably going to be okay. That's the impression I was given by Miss Adelson. Or I was being strung along 2 more weeks. But I see her again on the 13th when she comes back in town and is excited to have a date with me. So we had a date.
All right, so now we're at July 13th, 2014.
That's correct.
So within a week of the murder.
That's right.
Okay, tell us about your interactions with her that day.
Yeah, we went to dinner and a movie, and we returned to our house on Aqua Ridge.
All right, and did she tell you anything asked to tell you anything in confidence that evening?
Yeah, in a very serious tone of voice. The topic of conversation as we're walking up to the house is about relocation, being stuck in Tallahassee, and Danny, as the conversation always was about, Dan Markel. She said in a very serious tone of voice, "Can I tell you something in confidence?"
Objection, Your Honor. Motion in limine.
Now overruled. Ms. Kappelman, you understand the court's rulings.
I think I do, Judge, but asked to approach.
Please approach.
Judge, I expect the witness's answer to be that Ms. Adelson told him in confidence, in a serious tone, that her brother had looked into hiring a hitman in the spring of 2013, and that it was going to cost either $50,000 or $15,000. He can't recall which, she said. This, I think, is admissible at this point because Ms. Adelson denied making this statement. It's offered for impeachment.
Response.
This is our exact motion in limine that you ruled could not come in. Ms. Adelson, as the prosecutor stated just 15 minutes ago, is not on trial here. Charlie Adelson is on trial.
We're going to need to send the jurors out.
The jury will be able to listen to escort you out. Mr. Lacasse, you can step down from the witness stand now.
Okay.
Please step back outside.
Place that has face down on your chair.
The ruling that was made as to the defense motion in limine concerned the state eliciting this as a part of its case in chief. However, Mr. Rauschbaum, at this point, Ms. Adelson has specifically denied making this statement. Why is this an improper ground for the state to explore this on impeachment?
It's still hearsay, Your Honor. It's double hearsay. It's not done to...
All sorts of matters that otherwise would be inadmissible can become impeachment.
Judge, if Dr. Adelson, Charlie Adelson, made that statement to Mr. Lacasse, and he denied it, he could impeach him. They're impeaching another witness. That's not allowed. That's number one. Number two, I brought up
The
this
impeachment
issue.
of one witness's testimony through another is not allowed?
But they're impeaching her to go to his statement. They're stuck with her answer. They could have kept on cross-examining her of why they thought her answer was wrong. They can't now backdoor it through hearsay in another witness. That was the whole point of the motion. Similarly, Judge, we brought this issue up first thing this morning, sidebar, because if they were going to be allowed to do it, I was going to ask Ms. Adelson other questions on this issue. They said they weren't going to do it. So I didn't ask her those questions. And I didn't ask her those questions because I didn't want to open the door to it. And I can't call Ms. Adelson back as a witness because she has a Fifth Amendment right and I can't give her immunity. I brought this up for this very reason. She denied the statement yesterday. That's why I brought it up today. They can't backdoor a double hearsay statement based on a denial by that witness. Can't do it.
Ms. Kappelman.
But it's not hearsay, it's offered for impeachment Ms. Adelson was specifically drawn to the time and place of this statement and asked if she made it. She denied it. This witness heard her make the statement, so it's now admissible to future testimony.
This is not an insignificant fact or an immaterial one. Mr. Rauschbaum, if you wish to find some authority, I will give you 5 minutes to look if you have anything to argue as to this matter. Ms. Adelson has denied making the statement. She can be impeached through other witnesses regarding this matter.
Judge.
I will give you an opportunity to find some authority. If there's something more specific you can point me to other than what you're arguing right now.
Judge, I brought this up this morning so that I could front it with Ms. Adelson, and we were told, you were told, that they weren't going down this path. If I'd been told something different, I would have done something different that I can no longer do. It's precisely why I went sidebar first thing in the morning.
What is your response as to that portion of the argument, Ms. Kappelman?
That's a legal argument. I was asked if I was intending to offer double hearsay. I said I would never be offering hearsay without an exception.
I assume he's making this on fairness grounds, which goes to this would have changed his strategy of how he examined the witness.
I don't know what to do about that, Judge. I can't help Mr. Rauschbaum have better strategy. I was real specific with the witness to get that denial, so I'm not sure why the issue wasn't raised at that point.
Judge, I was really specific this morning that the double hearsay related to my motion to eliminate related to Jeffrey Lacasse. You knew what I was talking about.
Hold on. My ears work perfectly well. You don't have to raise your voice. Make your argument, please.
Everyone sidebar knew exactly what I was talking about. And we were told, Ms. Kappelman told you as an officer of the court that she was not going down that road. And so when Ms. Adelson was on the stand, I stayed away from it, not to open the door to it. She knew exactly what statement we were talking about. If you tell me you didn't know what statement I was talking about, I'll sit down. I was very specific. I was very specific that it was the double hearsay statement related to Jeffrey Lacasse that we filed our motion in limine on. I was very specific that it applied to this and also the Juvia dinner. Those were the words specifically out of my mouth back there, because when she asked the questions of Ms. Adelson, which were completely appropriate, I thought she might be going down this path. And so the first thing in the morning, we went sidebar so I could stop the charade. So that if the court were going to allow it to come in, I would handle it. She stayed silent. And I've been jumping up and down to try to prevent any possible mistrial twice, and still no mention of it. It's completely unfair, completely improper, and it denies him his constitutional right of due process.
Again, that's why I raised the issue. This goes to the fairness aspect of it. We'll take a brief 5-minute recess. If you have any authority you wish to present, I will entertain it further.
All rise. Court is back in session.
Everyone can be seated. Unless either party has additional argument, I am prepared to rule at this point.
I did have one thing I wanted to raise that I'm not sure was clear before. Ms. Adelson is still under the state subpoena, so I think she could be brought back for whatever additional questions need to be asked.
As to that point, Ms. Kappelman, the ability to extend immunity you have,
Mr. Rauschbaum does not. He calls her as a part of her, as a part of the defendant's case. What is your response to that?
I don't know. I mean, we're still in the state's case, so
Well, the defense can't call a witness
I know.
within the state's case.
I know, that's a good point. I just wanted to point out that she is still under my subpoena, so if we get creative, that might be a solution. I don't know, it hasn't been proffered what questions would be asked that weren't asked. I don't know what that is, but maybe there's something that could be worked out if that was Your Honor's ruling, was that that would be required.
Mr. Rauschbaum, anything else?
Judge, I'll just rest on 9609 Florida rule and its progeny, and Crawford and its progeny, and what I said before.
Very well. The court's ruling is as follows. The defense's motion in limine went to the state's ability as a part of its case in chief to present testimony from Mr. Lacasse that would be hearsay within hearsay. The motion in limine was granted on those grounds. However, the motion in limine and also the court's ruling did not discuss or limit in any way state's ability to present this information as impeachment. Ms. Adelson, at this point, she has testified, she has denied the statement taking place whatsoever. However, as it goes to fundamental fairness grounds, which are also a part of the ruling that has to be made, the defense did earlier at sidebar ask if this was going to come up in some way. As it related to substantive evidence, I believe the state responded it was not. The state did not make any representations concerning impeachment. I will find that this did affect the defense's ability, or their strategy, at least in examining the witness, as the witness also can invoke her Fifth Amendment right, and through a separate pleading has stated through counsel that she will invoke any Fifth Amendment right unless she is being granted immunity for that testimony. The ability of the defense to address this matter is compounded by the constitutional right of the witness and their inability to call her. On fundamental fairness grounds, I am not going to permit the impeachment on this topic. You may proffer the testimony from there. If the state is intending to recall the witness at that point, the issue of impeachment may be revisited. Does everyone understand?
Yes, may I make one clarification for the record?
Go ahead.
It's already on the record. We were at sidebar. What I was asked, my understanding of what I was asked is, was I intending to introduce any hearsay within hearsay through Mr. Lacasse? And my answer was that I would not introduce any hearsay within hearsay without exceptions. I think it was clear what I was intending to do was set up an impeachment through Ms. Adelson by drawing her attention to the specific date and time of the statement and asking her specifically if she made the statement, which she denied. I find it hard to believe that that doesn't alert the defense, in fairness, that that's what I'm intending to do, and that's what I did in the last trial successfully, which the defense in this case was in attendance at. So I think it's unfair to the state, but I understand Your Honor's ruling and we'll be ready to proceed.
Please bring in the witness so we can go through the proffer. Our words are stock and trade. If you are uncertain, Ms. Kappelman, as to what Mr. Rauschbaum was raising, we probably should have clarified it at that point.
Yes, so.
Please bring in the witness. Also, so we don't have to go through this again, Mr. Rauschbaum, as it pertains to the other rulings in the defense's motion in limine that the court has previously addressed. Although they may not be certain rulings pertain to the state's ability to present as substantive evidence. You understand this does not affect their ability to present it as impeachment as it pertains to all of the items that have been ruled on previously. June and Chimda, meaning everything that we've been previously addressing through these motions.
Well, they still have to follow the extrinsic evidence rule, collateral evidence rule.
My point being, something that cannot come in substantively can still be impeached with. You understand this?
Can? Yes.
I'm not saying it's necessarily going to happen.
Right.
But so we're not doing this song and dance about any other matters. All right. If we need to have sidebars and you're attempting to clarify something, if you're asking specifically as to impeachment, you need to be specific as well.
Fair enough, Your Honor.
Ms. Dugan, please bring in Mr. Lacasse. You may be seated, Mr. Lacasse. Ms. Kappelman, you may finish your sequence of questions on the topic you were starting.
Mr. Lacasse, when we broke, we were discussing a statement made to you by Wendi Adelson on July 13th, 2014 at her residence here in Tallahassee. Do you recall which statement?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, and what was that statement?
After asking to speak to me confidentially, she told me that last summer that Charles Adelson had looked into all possible options to take care of the Dan Markel problem, including hiring a hitman, and that it would cost about $15,000. I revised the amount. I said potentially that could have been $50,000. I'm unsure of the amount. The rest of the statement, very confident it's true.
So you weren't sure whether she said 15 or 50?
Right.
But she didn't say 15 or 50. She said one or the other.
She said one number that I thought was 15 when I talked to TPD, and later thought that could have been 50.
Okay, I'm with you. And this statement was made in what context? What was her demeanor?
Well, she asked to speak to me confidentially. She was dead serious about it. It was a chilling statement. I had a reaction to it. My stomach flipped. A little scary, a little weird. So it was a very serious statement she's making.
So clearly not a joke.
No, it was not a joke. There are other jokes in that domain. This was completely distinct and discrete from any joke. This was not funny.
And this statement was made within 5 days of Mr. Markel's murder by a hitman?
That's correct.
And was this said in any way in the context of the relocation issue?
Well, what preceded her saying that was a discussion of under what circumstances could she or would she leave Tallahassee, and she stated that the only way to leave Tallahassee was if something happened to Danny. That's what led into the statement I just repeated to you.
Thank you. That's the proffer, Your Honor.
Any cross-examination concerning the subject of the proffer?
I'm sorry,
Any cross-examination as to the subject of the proffer?
Yes, Your Honor.
Go ahead.
The statement was chilling and serious, right?
Yes.
Did you go to the police?
I did not.
You were so scared about the statement that you didn't alert the police the next day, that night.
I did not.
Why not?
Because it was a past tense statement, and I thought Charlie was a scary guy, but it was about something supposedly he did last summer. I did not know there was a present case, a present instant threat. I did not know him and had visited Tallahassee. I didn't have the context.
So the statement comes out, and you say, all right, not going to call the police. Hey, Wendi, you want to go out tomorrow?
That's not quite how it went.
No, you didn't try to go on a date with her the next day?
No, we did go on a date the next day, and then she cut off all contact without barely talking to me on that date. So I didn't have a lot of time to process it, but it was a shocking enough thing that it took a day or two to process. Also, I had repeated that statement to a friend of mine before the murder, and I didn't get a reaction from her like, this is shocking. I sought feedback from a friend who would verify that I made that statement before the murder, and she didn't say, oh, geez, you should call the police. So it wasn't just me. There was another person that I consulted with because it freaked me out, and I decided after talking to her it was past tense, so probably not that dangerous, and we were really wrong. And maybe I should have called the police.
So Charlie Adelson lets you know that he's has friends in the criminal element, the Cuban criminal element, right?
Yes.
And you know that there's a heated dispute between this family. You testified to it today. A heated dispute.
Yes.
About relocation, about divorce.
Well, the dispute's no longer about relocation, but yes, there's an ongoing litigation for sure.
Right. And then Wendi Adelson tells you that this man, who is part of the criminal element, really looked into hiring a hitman.
She did say that.
And you thought, I'm not going to go to the police on that. That's your testimony, right?
That's the decision I made. It didn't really cross my mind because of the past tense nature of it. And I consulted with a friend, bounced it off of her before the murder. And neither one of us thought, oh, geez, let's call the police. So it's possible that Charlie is so dangerous that I should have called the police. Yeah, but I did not.
And so at this point in time, your relationship with Wendi Adelson was really bad, right?
It was hard to tell.
It's hard to tell that it was really bad?
It was a roller coaster ride constantly because you referred to the next night, the next day, the 14th. On the 14th, I got a warm, inviting call from Wendi Adelson, eager to spend time with me. Maybe trying to distract me, I don't know. But
okay. Well, we're going to get to the distracting part.
Yeah.
Because that's what this is all about.
But it wasn't in a great, the relationship was not in a great spot. I'll concede that to you.
So
yes.
Your testimony is that when this woman is about to break up with you, when she is avoiding you, when you have just been caught going through her phone and her planning.
How's she avoiding me?
Well,
Mr. Lacasse, you're not here to ask questions.
Yes, sir.
Answer what's asked of you.
Your testimony is that when you are on the outs with her, which the record will show you were during this time period, that she confides in you the most serious, the most important thing in her life. That's your testimony, yes or no?
Yes.
Okay.
She has a history of boarding out things that aren't in her own self-interest.
Judge, I would ask that to be stricken from the record. It's unresponsive.
This is just a part of the proffer, and if you've reached the end of your cross-examination on the proffer session, we do need to move on.
That's fine, Your Honor.
Mr. Lacasse, or actually Ms. Kappelman, the court's ruling remains the same. You're not to inquire further as to this subject matter. We will revisit later if it comes to it.
Yes, sir.
Please bring back in the witnesses, or the jurors.
Good.
Before you bring the jury back in, was there a second issue?
There is the celebration dinner. I'm sure that's the next one.
Yeah, that is another issue. So is it the same ruling in reference to the celebration dinner?
Well, one moment, because I don't know what the celebration dinner is all about.
It's in the same motion in limine, Judge.
Bring it back up. Number 2, the way this just concerns statements, it doesn't say anything about celebration.
All rise, jury entering the courtroom.
One moment.
Back up.
Where is the celebration dinner covered in your motion?
It's in the same motion in limine regarding the hearsay statements. There were several of them. The first one was the statement that we just discussed, and the second one is that Charlie Adelson said that he went to dinner with it, that she told him that Charlie Adelson said it was a celebration dinner. It's in the same motion in limine.
However, this statement is being directly attributed to your client that was heard by the witness.
No.
Mr. Lacasse, please step down again.
It's the same exact issue. It's Wendi Adelson telling him what Charlie Adelson said.
Kappelman responds.
Yes, sir. I asked Ms. Adelson about the dinner. She acknowledged there was a dinner. She did vomit at the dinner table, but denied calling it a celebration dinner or hearing Charlie Adelson call it a celebration dinner. I anticipate this witness would indicate that it was referred to as a celebration dinner.
Mr. Rauschbaum.
It's the same issue, and you ruled on this issue. It's the same motion in limine.
I'm looking at the line now. All right, Ms. Kappelman, I believe we find ourselves in the same position unless you have a argument which differentiates the television from the celebration dinner.
I think I understand what you mean, Judge. I don't have any additional argument other than this is offered for impeachment. It's not hearsay, not covered by the motion. The appropriate grounds were laid, and it's admissible as impeachment.
Do you wish to proffer the celebration dinner by Mr. Lacasse as well?
No, sir. I think my preference at this point, assuming your ruling will be the same on the celebration dinner, is to have Mr. Lacasse step off the stand, proceed with another witness, and revisit this issue after the lunch break.
Very well. Please bring the jurors back in. You may end your examination in front of them, and then Mr. Rauschbaum will have his opportunity. Well, actually, Mr. Rauschbaum, how long do you believe your cross-examination of the witness will take?
I'm a little
in
confused.
front of the jurors.
I'm a little confused. Are you...
The ruling is the impeachment as the celebration dinner is going to be excluded on the same grounds for now. If we need to revisit later, we will, but as to your cross-examination that will be taking place in front of the jurors on the subject matter that's already been covered, how long do you think that's going to take?
Oh, she's going to stop asking questions of this witness.
I believe she just indicated she would.
Okay. For the issues that we've dealt with just now,
prior to any proffers and sending the jurors out.
I'm not really sure, Your Honor. Probably maybe 30 minutes.
Right, let's bring them back in. You can start your cross. We'll take the lunch break and then pick up from there. Please bring back in the witness.
All right, we're entering the courtroom.
Everyone can be seated. Bailiff, if you can please instruct Mr. Lacasse to come back in. State have any further direct examination for this witness?
No further questions at this time, Your Honor.
You may cross-examine.
Thank you, Your Honor. Professor Lacasse, good morning.
Good morning.
You met Charlie Adelson one time, right?
That's correct.
It was a trip that you and Wendi took down to South Florida for a day after a spring break with the kids that she taught.
Yeah, we were in Immokalee, and then we went over to Miami, or to Fort Lauderdale and Miami, just for the 11th. That's right.
And you had dinner. You said you had dinner on March 11th of 2014 at a place called Yardbird.
That's correct.
You recall Charlie was in his scrubs?
Don't recall that, but it wouldn't surprise me.
And Katherine Magbanua was at that dinner, right?
She was.
And I think you said that she was bringing up stuff about her ex, right?
Not a lot, just a little bit, but she did bring that up, and I recalled it.
Is it fair to say that she was pushing for information at that dinner?
From who?
From Miss Adelson?
I don't recall that.
Well, was she trying to get Miss Adelson to talk about her ex-husband?
I don't recall that.
Do you recall there being a lot of discussion at the dinner about Professor Markel?
Don't recall a lot. It always came up for a minute. It came up in the context of Wendi Adelson's book. Most of it was Charlie talking.
You recall Katie asking questions about how the divorce was going, how he was treating her, where he was. You don't recall any of that happening at the dinner?
I do not recall any of that.
The only thing you recall is her saying something about her ex-husband.
That's what stuck out. We've had previous legal proceedings where I also could not, I can't, it's a dinner 9 years ago. I don't remember a lot of detail of it. And it wasn't long either. It was just an hour.
Isn't it likely that she was talking about her ex-husband and her problems because there was talk about exes?
I mean, that's pure speculation on my part. I don't recall. I do recall some other things we spoke about, but I don't know if I'm allowed to talk about them or not. They involved your client. They weren't. So I'm in my head trying to figure out how much space was there for other stuff. As I previously testified, most of it was Charlie telling us stories, kind of.
But Katie was clearly wanting to bring up the topic, as you said, about her family situation, correct?
Yeah, but I'm talking about 2 or 3 sentences here. I only recalled that in retrospect because there was a murder, and I thought, oh, geez.
And it was important enough for Ms. Kappelman to ask you about that, right?
Okay, yeah.
Right? So you remember her talking about her family situation, right?
Yeah, and I also remember Charlie talking about a party he had recently attended. There's a few other random things.
Fair enough. I didn't ask, with all due respect, I didn't ask you that.
Okay.
Let's just stick with the family situation.
Okay.
So Katherine Magbanua was talking about her family situation, correct?
For 2 or 3 sentences, she mentioned that Sigfredo Garcia, not by name, and the tensions with him, yes.
Okay. You say that Charlie talked in the hot tub or the pool about having connections to the criminal element. That's what your testimony was, right?
Yes, starting with my initial statement to TPD, yes, sir.
And you're talking about your statement to TPD after the murder, right?
3 days after the murder.
And after you thought Wendi Adelson was trying to frame you for the murder, right?
I didn't think that in that interview.
Okay.
It took me some time to process.
You're aware that you were called in as a suspect for the murder, right?
Yes.
Okay. And after that point in time is when you gave that statement to TPD regarding what Mr. Adelson said. Just yes or no?
After I was called into the police station?
Yes.
Yeah, that's when I gave my statement at the police station.
Right. What I'm making clear is it's not like you had dinner and were in a hot tub with Charlie Adelson and you went back to Tallahassee and gave the statement then, right?
No, I would have no reason to do that.
I understand that, Professor Lacasse. I'm just trying to make it clear for the jury when you gave TPD this statement.
Yeah.
And the answer is you gave him the statement after the murder and after you were called in as a suspect on that murder.
That's correct.
Okay. Now, do you recall texting Charlie Adelson after you met with him?
I texted Mr. Adelson one time, yes.
Okay. And do you recall saying to him, "Hey, Charlie, it's Jeff," as in Wendi and Jeff. "Hey, man, thanks for your hospitality the other night. Sorry about the clusterfuck with the cab. It was great to finally meet you. I could tell how proud you are of your sister. I am too. She's really 1 in a million. Take care, dude, and look forward to seeing you again sometime soon." Do you recall texting him that?
I do recall texting him that.
Okay. You like hanging out with the criminal element?
It was my new girlfriend's brother who she was very close with. I've been dating Wendi seriously for 12 days. I didn't think it was right to give a... I was polite rather than honest, let's put it that way. I mean...
Let me ask the question again.
Yeah.
Do you like hanging out with the criminal element?
No, I don't do that.
Did Charlie Adelson text you, or did you text him?
I texted him. I can't remember if that was solicited by Wendi Adelson or not, but I texted him.
It wasn't solicited by Charlie Adelson, right?
No, we never spoke again, though.
Okay. Actually, he texted you back.
Right, I never answered.
And he said, "It was great seeing you. I'm glad you made your flight. Hopefully we can all hang out soon."
Mm-hmm.
Now, you testified that Wendi was a wreck. Hold on one second, sorry. One moment, Your Honor. I've lost my place. You testified about some of these divorce filings on direct, correct?
Yes.
And that Wendi, you testified that Wendi was a wreck about him, right?
Yes.
That's not what you thought in the spring of 2014, though, was it?
You're questioning whether it is what I thought in spring of 2014. I noticed repeatedly her reacting to motions and litigation and getting very, very upset. I'm not saying there was never any good times, but she was very upset when he filed something.
Do you recall sending an email to Wendi Adelson in March 27th of 2014 where you tell her that she's adapting really well to unpleasant circumstances and that she needs to give herself more credit?
That sounds familiar. I would say it got increasingly worse March, April, May, June in terms of reactions to the entire situation. But I know I was sending that email, yes, trying to encourage my girlfriend at the time, yes.
Oh, really? It got worse. Filings in March, April, and June.
No, I don't know when the last filing was. Her reactions, not just to filings, but the entire situation. Let me clarify that. So.
Hold on a second. Would it surprise you that there weren't any filings?
No,
in May or June?
No, I'm aware of that.
Would it surprise you that there's been testimony in this courtroom that actually things got a little better?
Wendy's status didn't get better. My observations of Wendy saw her spiraling downward in that time period is what I was trying to refer to.
Do you recall that in the spring, summer of 2014, Professor Markel asked Wendy's parents to babysit for him?
I didn't know about that, or I don't recall it if I did.
I'm sure you did. Now, do you recall telling law enforcement that your impression was that Professor Markel's filing was going to fail?
Yes, I was repeating things I'd heard from Wendi Adelson, so most of that content, that was,
Sir, I'm just asking you for yes or no questions.
Okay.
Let me follow up of where you get that information from.
Okay.
I know you have an agenda.
Yes, I told police that, yes.
Okay. So, you told the police that Wendi wasn't concerned about Professor Markel succeeding with that motion.
No, she was highly anxious.
Did she think that the motion was going to be granted?
I don't think she knew. I think that's what caused the anxiety.
Didn't you tell law enforcement that your impression was that Professor Markel's motion was going to fail?
I did tell law enforcement that, yes.
And didn't you just tell the jury that that impression came from Wendi Adelson?
Well, from my interactions with her and partially my own opinion, to clarify. But yes, that's true. Yeah.
You also told law enforcement that everyone in the legal community agreed with that assessment.
I didn't speak to everyone in the legal community.
Well, let's read your interview then. And let's see if it refreshes your recollection. One moment, Your Honor. Being summoned. you don't recall being recorded where you said, and I quote, "Everyone in the legal community agreed with that assessment." At 2 o'clock on 7/23/14, interview part 1, at 34:35 in the interview. You don't recall saying that?
Can you give me the date in the interview again, please?
7/23/2014, interview part 1, and 3/6/2015. You reiterated it at 34 minutes and 35 seconds into the recording. You don't recall saying that?
Vaguely, I do recall saying something like that. I'm a non-lawyer trying to figure out this situation. Getting different messages from different people.
I have no further questions right now, Your Honor.
You redirect examination.
At the time you were in the hot tub with the defendant, did you know that he was a criminal element? I mean, okay, let me rephrase it. Did you know he was conspiring to commit the murder of Dan Markel?
I had no idea.
All right, and when you were at dinner with he and Katherine Magbanua, did you know that she was conspiring to commit the murder of Dan Markel?
Had no idea.
So you didn't know when you were in the hot tub that you were hanging out with a criminal element in that regard?
No.
Nothing further.
Lacasse, you may step down. You may be recalled at some point. Members of the jury, we're going to take our lunch break at this point. Once again, I'm going to remind you not to discuss the case with each other or anyone else. Do not look at any news coverage or discuss the matter with any friends or family. Enjoy your lunch break. We will get started once again at 1:15. Please report back by 1:10. Everyone can be seated. I hate to ask, but I'm almost afraid it will come back. The lawyers have anything to raise before we go on lunch break?
I don't know who the witnesses are, but we'll find out.
What's that?
I have a vote with the defense counsel now.
Go ahead.
You have a problem. Sorry, Your Honor, just 1 second.
Jordan.
We don't have anything else.
Wonderful answer. Next time we have a proffer, Mr. Rauschenbaum, if you can keep your voice down for the information that you don't want the jurors to hear, that wall still, something can get through, keep the volume down.
Thank you, Your Honor, for the reminder. It's a bad habit.
All right, please be back by 1:10 as well, we'll get started then. Adelson, you remain under oath. You may be seated.
Ms. Adelson, we've got 2 points we need clarification on from you. When we talked about your relationship with Jeffrey Lacasse, we talked about a occasion on July 13th, 2014. It would have been the Sunday before the murder. And on that occasion, did you, at your residence that evening, in the context of discussing the relocation issue involving you and your children moving to South Florida, did you say that Charlie, your brother, this defendant, had explored all options to resolve the problem, including hiring a hitman, and it would cost either $15,000 or $50,000?
No.
And did you have a conversation with Jeffrey Lacasse at your residence that night where you said you wanted to share something in confidence with him?
No.
Did you ever say that your brother had seriously hired a hitman where you weren't repeating the joke? You were serious. All right. And second point for clarification involves that dinner where you got sick at the dinner table. You recall which evening I'm speaking of?
I do.
This would have been about 2 weeks to a month after the homicide, I believe. Okay. And on that occasion, did you ever tell Jeffrey Lacasse that Charlie had referred to the dinner as a celebration dinner?
No.
Did you ever tell Jeffrey Lacasse that it was a celebration dinner?
No.
No further questions.
Cross-exam.
Very briefly. Good afternoon. During your interrogation, do you recall Jeffrey Lacasse's name coming up?
Yes.
And do you recall that it was Jane McPherson who brought up his name, not you?
Yes, correct.
And do you recall, as a result of his name being brought up, he was considered a suspect?
Yes.
And do you recall that Detective Isom asked you a lot of questions about him?
Yes.
And he asked you about his car?
Yes.
And he asked you about his travel schedule?
Yes.
And he asked you for his information so that he could speak with him, correct?
Correct.
But you didn't bring up his name, right?
No.
You didn't try to frame Jeffrey Lacasse for any murder, right?
Absolutely not.
In fact, Jane McPherson was the one who brought up his name, correct?
She was.
I have no further question.
Please approach.
You're gonna get to do it.
I'm at Recross.
Given the unique nature of what we had to deal with earlier, is there anything else that you need to ask this witness about? Because I believe the entire point of this is to set up the impeachment. Ms. Keppelman, am I wrong?
No, you're correct, Your Honor.
On the Crawford issue, I'm okay now.
Very well.
I still make the earlier argument regarding, I don't know the Florida rule, but collateral evidence rule. But on the Crawford issue, I will withdraw that.
Very well.
That's what happens here.
But Jeffrey Lacasse's name did come up while you were in the interview room, being interviewed in reference to the shooting, right?
Jane McPherson brought him up.
She was in the room with you during the interview.
For some of it, not for the whole time.
Okay, but during the part where Jeffrey Lacasse's name came up, she was in the interview room with you.
Yes, she brought him up.
And this is the same interview that we've referenced previously where you were taken from the restaurant to be told about what happened with Dan.
Yes.
Nothing further.
You may step down, ma'am. Will Ms. Adelson be recalled by either the state or the defense again?
Certainly hope not, Your Honor.
You remain under subpoena. Please call your next witness.
Jeffrey Lacasse.
Mr. Lacasse, you remain under oath. You may be seated.
All right, Mr. Lacasse, I want to take you back to July 13th, 2014. This is going to be the Sunday before the homicide that we're here about. Did you see Wendi Adelson that evening at her residence here in Tallahassee?
Yes, after we returned from dinner and a movie, we went back to her residence. Yes, ma'am.
All right, and at some point that evening, did the issue of the relocation battle that was going on back in the summer of 2013 come up?
It did.
And is that the issue we've already touched on, which has to do with her wanting to move to South Florida with the children and filing a petition to do so in the courts?
That's right, and by extension, the issue of being stuck in Tallahassee.
Okay. And while discussing that issue, did Ms. Adelson make some statements to you about her brother Charlie?
She did.
And what were those statements?
She asked to speak to me confidentially in a very serious tone of voice, told me that Charlie had investigated all possible options to take care of the problem of Danny Markel, including hiring a hitman, which would cost about $15,000. And I later revised that and thought maybe it was $50,000, but the dollar amount was the only thing in question. She definitely said that Charles Adelson had looked into hiring a hitman to kill Danny Markel.
And when did she say Mr. Adelson had looked into hiring a hitman?
When the relocation was denied, the previous summer.
Okay. All right. And the dollar amount, so she either said 15 or 50, you're not sure which?
That's correct.
Okay. And when she said this, what was her demeanor like?
She's very serious.
All right, so definitely not to be confused with the TV joke?
No, I'd heard that joke repeatedly. I knew that joke. This was something very different. This was chilling, a little scary, made my stomach flip. I found it disturbing. The joke was said in a lighthearted manner, and this was not said in that way. This was serious and said confidentially.
All right, thank you. And I want to, okay, I think we should go from there to the next day, which is going to be July 14th, 2014, the Monday before the murder.
Yes, ma'am.
Did you see Wendi Adelson on that day?
Yeah, I can't remember if I contacted her, if she contacted me, but she was excited to see me. And I wasn't so sure about that because the night before we'd had an awkward conversation at the conclusion of that night. And I had told her that she didn't want to do this anymore, that she could just send me a text and I wouldn't, take any offense. We would just, break up. So I didn't get that text. Instead, I talked to Wendi Adelson and she was excited to see me.
All right, so what did you do?
Well, then she needed to call me back, and it went from her enthusiasm about seeing me to let's just meet at yoga tonight, go in separate cars. So there was a real shift in about 30 minutes.
Did you go to yoga?
We did. We went to yoga.
All right. And after yoga, was there a discussion about your relationship and the status of your relationship?
Yeah, a very brief one. I mean, yoga's not a great place to talk, obviously. So while we were sitting there, she seemed very cold. And I kind of got the feeling that it was over, that this was it. So as we walked to the car, I tried to talk to her about the relationship, and that didn't go well. And so I just kind of put up my hands and walked away, feeling sad that this was it.
All right. And as you walked away, was that the end, or was there more conversation after you began to walk away?
No, she called out to me, and I walked back towards her, and she was deeply curious. Well, let me back up slightly. During that conversation, she didn't have any interest in spending any time with me for the rest of the week, so it kind of confirmed, this is over.
Mm-hmm.
But then when she called me back, she had a series of detailed questions about what I would be doing on Friday.
And Friday is going to be July 18th, right?
Yes.
And that's the date of the homicide?
That's exactly right.
What were her inquiries of you regarding that date?
I had a trip planned to Tennessee. She was aware that I was planning to leave about 11 a.m. On Friday. I need to get to Atlanta for an early dinner, so with traffic, she knew I was departing at 11. And at the yoga studio or in the parking lot, she had asked if I was still going, if I didn't go, why not, what route I would be taking. A lot of bizarre amount of interest in that trip that didn't make sense to me at the time, given that she didn't want to spend time with me.
And how does it make sense to you now?
Well, if I had left on my trip at the scheduled time that she had known about for quite a while, I would have driven pretty close to Dan Markel's house about the same time as at the murder, in a similar looking car to the suspect vehicle.
What type of vehicle did you drive?
I drove a 2004 Nissan Sentra that was silver metallic gray color.
So if you had followed your original plans, you would have been passing by the Markel residence or nearby there around the same time as the killers were fleeing?
Yeah, I would have been at Capitol Circle in Thomasville. Sure, I would have been on the same cell tower, for example. I think my life could have been pretty complicated had I taken my original plans.
All right, so you didn't, I guess, take the original plans.
No, I did not. I had made a last-minute decision the night before to leave Thursday night instead. I had not informed Ms. Adelson about that because we weren't speaking. Actually, no, I don't know that anyone, for sure that anyone in Tallahassee knew I had changed my plans, just the people at the other end.
All right, so you were actually in Tennessee at the time of the homicide.
I was.
And when we've heard you were called in as a potential suspect, and apparently named by a Jane McPherson. Do you know who that is?
I do.
Okay, who is that?
That was a friend of Wendi Adelson's, and she was a doctoral student in our program. I had not much of a relationship with her, just a kind of a working relationship. We'd worked on a couple of projects together, but I didn't know her very well at all.
but someone that knew that you had been dating Wendi.
Yeah, I think she was a confidant of Wendi Adelson's. Yes, for sure.
Okay. So you get called in, and were you able to provide documentation to show that you were in Tennessee and not in Tallahassee?
Yeah, I was excluded fairly quickly because the investigators found Kmart surveillance footage of me at a Kmart in Tennessee using my credit card and my cell phone showing me there shortly after the murder, so it was impossible that I was the shooter.
All right. And then was there also some similar type coincidences around the time of the trip that the killers made in June?
Yes. On June 6th, I had a business trip to Gainesville, and I departed at 11 a.m. on a Friday, June 6th, which Miss Adelson would have known about by March. So really, I take 2 trips out of Tallahassee in my car the whole spring and summer semester. And both times, hitmen try to kill Dan Markel.
Okay. Any further contact with Wendi after the yoga date?
We, about 10 days after the murder, she reached out to a mutual friend and we had a few phone calls.
And during one of those phone calls, did you learn about a dinner where Wendi had become ill at the table?
Yes, I did learn about that.
And what did you learn about that dinner?
That she went out to dinner with Charlie for what he called a celebration dinner. He said something to her. She spontaneously vomited on the table.
And this would have been within how much time after the homicide?
Within a few weeks.
Was it specified that the celebration was in reference to Dan Markel's death as opposed to anything else?
Wasn't specified.
Okay. But whatever it was, that's the dinner where she vomited.
That's right. That's right.
One moment, please. No further questions.
Cross-examination.
Let's shift gears a teeny bit.
Okay.
When you and Miss Adelson were dating, there were occasions when she would drive, right?
Yes.
Did she have a good sense of direction?
I don't know.
You're aware that when she was married to, she lived in Professor Markel, she lived on the house on Trescott, right?
Yes.
And when you were dating Wendi, would she often use Trescott as a shortcut to get from one place to another?
She used it a few times when I was in the car, if that's what you're asking. She did that on June 27th, the day we departed to Gainesville at 11 a.m. on a Friday.
I think you said in one of your interviews that she would do that at least 100 times, drive by the house.
That was a figure of speech.
Okay. Now, you mentioned, we'll start with the joke, the
Yes.
bad joke.
Yes.
You mentioned this TV joke, how it was lighthearted, bad humor, certainly in the context of what happened, but it was a joke.
Yeah, it was dark humor, I would say, but it was clearly a joke, yes.
And do you recall that joke being given at that Yardbird dinner?
I don't.
Could it have been given at that Yardbird dinner?
It could have, but I don't recall it, and I actually think I might remember that.
I'm sure you do.
Given what happened.
I think one thing that has been established is you believe that Wendi Adelson tried to frame you for Professor Markel's murder, right?
I'm suspicious that there was an effort made in that way, yes.
And so that has affected your viewpoint, correct?
Sure.
Well, let's talk about your viewpoint. And we have to go a little bit back and repeat a couple things to put it in context. So you meet with Charlie Adelson. He tells you that he's he's friends with people in the criminal element. You say thanks for a great meeting, correct? Send him a nice text.
The next day I sent him a text, yes.
You don't go to the police.
No, I don't go to the police.
Okay. You then hear that Charlie's made a joke many times about this TV being cheaper than hiring a hitman.
Heard the joke twice.
Okay. You don't go to the police.
No.
Then in June, at a time when Wendi Adelson is breaking up with you, she sits you down and she says, I have to confide the biggest secret in my life. That a year ago, my brother actually looked into hiring a hitman. That's your testimony here today, right?
You said in June, sir?
In June? I'm sorry, in July.
Okay.
In July.
Can you restate that? I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'll do it again.
I'm sorry.
I'll try to keep it lower this time. In July of 2014,
yes,
about a week before the murder, when you're breaking up with Wendi Adelson, or things are seriously not good, she sits you down and she says, Jeffrey, I've got to confide in you. My brother actually looked into hiring a hitman. That's your testimony here today.
No, she didn't sit me down. She said it in passing, and she had a habit of blurting out things that weren't in her own self-interest. But she did do that. She did make that statement, yes, sir.
And it was chilling to you.
It was.
Unlike the joke, you thought it was real.
It was real, yes.
Did you go to the police?
I did not.
And then you break up.
Kind of. She strung me along for another week, as you know. Mostly, yeah, but kind of.
Well, the murder happens and you get called in as a suspect of the murder.
Right.
And you're upset at that point.
Yes, I was upset.
And you have a first interview with the police, and then you have a second interview with the police.
Yes.
And during the second interview with the police, you talk solely about Wendi Adelson.
Yeah, I think that's right. I felt like I needed to say they needed to look at Wendi Adelson as well. That was the point of that talk. Yes, sir.
That was the point of that talk.
Yes.
And you even, you don't mention actually Charlie Adelson at all in that second interview.
I already had done so yes, you're correct.
So that second interview, you talk just about Wendi Adelson. And in fact, you're so uncomfortable in the interview. You tell the police that. You say, I'm so uncomfortable, and Detective Isom asked you why. Do you recall that?
It wasn't a Detective Isom.
Okay, I'm sorry. The detective who was interviewing you asked you why.
I don't, you have to remind me on that.
Well, let me remind you what you said. You said, because it's hard for me, because if she would take me back right now, I would go back to her.
Yeah, I was still under her spell to some degree. I would say I was fairly pathetic at that point. I would acknowledge that, yeah.
So let me understand this, because I want to make sure I've got it right. I don't want to put words in your mouth.
Sure.
Wendi Adelson has told you that her brother looked into hiring a hitman sometime in 2013. He gets murdered.
He does.
You go to an interview, and during that interview, you're still thinking about staying with Wendi Adelson. You don't want to talk badly about her because you still want to be with her.
You're talking about this July 23rd interview specifically?
Yes.
Yeah, it only been a week. It was still pretty fresh. I was still pretty mixed up. That's right.
Okay, well, let's see how mixed up you were after that. So then you're clearly broken up at that point. We can agree, right?
Actually, I would say yes functionally, but I testified before that Ms. Adelson and I had conversations in August where she behaved as if we were still together, and we had a conversation that finally ended it, initiated by me. Now, practically, we were broken up.
You never dated, you never went on a date with her again, right?
Never saw her again other than our courtroom, right.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Then she tells you, according to you, that my client, Charlie Adelson, says that she had a celebration dinner with Charlie, and that the celebration dinner was about the murder of Professor Markel.
I don't recall saying that last part.
But that's how you took it, right?
I worried that was the case. I told the police, and my understanding is Wendi conceded she threw up on her dinner table.
Do you know that the first time you told the police that was in March of 2015?
I do know that.
So what happened in September of 14? What happened in October of 14? What happened in November of 14? What happened in December of 14? January of 15? February of 15? You still didn't think that was important to tell the police?
I'm happy to answer that. I think you deserve an explanation on that. You may have noticed in my March 6, 2015 interview, I come in with notes, big pile of notes. Those notes are written in July of August. They're written pretty quick after the murder. I didn't come in right away, partially because I was scared of your client. I was scared of the repercussions if I went on the record further about my suspicion. So I was reluctant to come back in because I was frankly scared.
Oh, I get it. You were scared of him in August of 14, but you weren't scared of him in March of 2015.
Now I decided to man up. I decided it was a homicide and needed to man up. That's the decision I came
Right.
to.
You weren't scared to tell him that my client had actually looked into a hitman a year earlier. That didn't scare you. You could tell him that in July.
No, I was.
Hold on, sir. Let me ask the question.
Fair enough.
In July of 2014, you told police that Charlie Adelson, you heard, actually looked at hiring a hitman. You weren't scared to tell him that.
I asked for police protection. I was scared.
You told them that in July of 2014. Isn't that correct?
Yes, in the same conversation, I said, can I get some assurances? Can I get some protection? I have something I want to tell you. I'm scared to tell you.
But you were too scared to tell them about a celebration dinner comment, and you waited almost half a year to tell them?
Well, I did wait half a year to tell them, but the notes I brought in were written right after that interview. I also wanted to get my thoughts together because I thought this day might come. And I wanted, in those first two interviews, there was a lot going on. It was pretty traumatic, so I wanted to collect my thoughts. So that's what I was doing, in addition to being pretty frightened and having to get over that idea.
Isn't it true that those comments never happened, and you're upset because you believe that this family tried to frame you for murder?
Everything I'm saying is true.
I'm sure it is. May I have a moment, Your Honor?
Move to strike the I'm sure it is comment.
I'll withdraw it.
It's withdrawn. Please disregard, members of the jury.
I have no further comments for this. Or questions.
Redirect examination.
This may seem like a fine point, but I want to make sure it's crystal clear. When Mr. Rashbaum was asking you about the hot tub conversation, Mr. Rashbaum said that his client said that he was friends with people in the criminal element. Is that exactly what was said?
The word I recall is he had connections and friends on both sides of the tracks.
Okay. Connections to
Criminal
the criminal
elements.
element.
And particularly, there was the Cuban neighborhood comment that I repeated to the TPD later.
Gotcha.
Actually, on July 21st, first interview, I mentioned that comment.
Okay. How many pages of notes do you have in reference to this case?
Like right now or over the last 9 years?
I mean, kind of over the last 9 years.
Yeah. I'm a researcher by training. I'm an analytic person by nature. So those 6 months was pretty obsessive. I was reviewing every text message, every email, writing. I condensed it down. I think if you watch the videotape, you would see me bring in 3, 4, 5 pages. But I would say I wrote probably 100 pages. before I came in to see them the third time.
Going through every receipt,
Yes.
every detail,
Yes.
partially out of what? What motivation?
Well, pretty traumatic, so fear was part of it. Like, if they can catch the people that did this, I'll be safe. That was a big piece of it. Also, this was a brutal murder, and I wanted to see justice done, and I did not want to leave something sitting on the shelf. If I was in the possession of something that could help, I wanted to help.
And isn't it true that you didn't know what was going to end up being important out of all the nuggets you dug out of the phone and everywhere
I
else?
had no idea, and I also told them repeatedly, I hope and pray this wasn't Wendi and Charlie Adelson. But just in case, here's the stuff I have.
And Mr. Rashbaum asked you about why didn't you go to the police when you learned that Mr. Adelson had in fact looked into hiring a hitman. Just to reiterate, the statement was made the Monday before the murder, is that right?
That's correct.
Okay. And that's the statement where Wendy's relating it to you.
Yes.
All right, so that's going to be in 2014.
Yes.
Okay, and she's making a statement about something that occurred in what year?
2013.
All right, why didn't you go to the police with this information?
Because it was a past tense thing she was reporting. I did not sense there was a present danger. I didn't know hitmen had already visited Tallahassee. I didn't realize there was an active murder plot.
In hindsight, should you have gone to the police with this information?
Yes.
One moment, please. Nothing else, Your Honor.
Mr. Lacasse, you may step down. Mr. Rashbaum, did you have something that you needed to raise?
May we go sidebar briefly?
Approach. Please remain on the stand for now, sir.
Yes, sir.
Go ahead.
Judge, I'm going to make a Richardson application and ask that he be kept on subpoena. We have not gotten any notes that he just testified that he has notes and notes. We have not received any of those notes. He's a state witness, so I'm requesting those notes. And I would like him to be able to be recalled if I find something in those notes that I think is necessary to Mr. Adelson's defense.
Ms. Keppelman?
I don't have possession of those. I can inquire of the witness whether he's retained them.
Please do so. And then we'll have the Richardson inquiry.
Released at this time or excused from the stand?
Did you have any further inquiry for him, Ms. Keppelman? Or not at this time?
I can do that.
Very well. You may step down, Mr. Lacasse.
Judge, if he could just be kept on.
You remain under subpoena, sir. You may be recalled at some point during the trial. Members of the jury, we're going to take a brief break. The bailiff will escort you back to the jury room.
No, I got that. But I didn't do that. So I did on the proper.
Everyone can be seated.
I did it today.
Mr. Rauschbaum, you were asking for a Richardson inquiry concerning the notes at this point.
Well, I think what may make sense first, with all respect, is maybe let them just ask him whether he has the notes first and whether they can get them, rather than do an inquiry. I don't think the state has done anything wrong.
Well, I think that directly goes to factor one, whether there's a violation, but yes.
I don't think there's a violation, but I think I'm entitled to the notes if he has them, and then we can recall them.
Very well. Does your client need to use the restroom or take a break?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right. We'll take a 10-minute break and we'll go back on at 3:40. Ms. Kappelman, how many more witnesses do you plan to call before we?
I have two, Your Honor, but we can see how long the next one takes and decide from there.
Okay.
Who are the two?
3:40 to start again. I'll say hello to Lisa.
Well, I want to
I questioned, I had to get on Lisa earlier about her whatever Lisa is the court reporter, my trial always tracks in some way.
You're killing me today.
But Lisa herself is a wonderful person.
What is hail? I did hail, but I think I did it in the past. I don't think the jury.
Where are they ready back there?
He said he did the notes for 9 years.
Okay, just okay. Everyone may be seated. Where are they ready back there?
He said he did the notes for 9 years.
Okay, just okay.
No. I understand. That's clear. This is not going to go like I think it's going to go. Just so you understand. Okay. Your lawsuit is worth tens of thousands of dollars, right? Hundreds of thousands. Okay, got it. I got it. I got it. I asked one question.
Judge, the plan is Mr. Rashbaum would like to inquire of the witness about the notes. We figured we'll do that now since he's here.
Without the jury or with?
With.
Okay.
It'll be quick, Your Honor, I promise.
One
question that becomes 9?
I didn't say that.
Something like this.
Louder, please. Just keep it. It's for closing. It's really good, though. So don't lose it.
Pitch count with these questions
Really
pretty soon.
I'm just saying it's really good.
All right,
Everyone may be seated. Members of the jury, the defense is going to have a very brief recross of Mr. Lacasse.
Mr. Lacasse, those notes, pages and pages of notes, did you provide them to the prosecutors?
No, they were destroyed. I used them to guide my interviews with investigators, and then I destroyed them.
You destroyed them?
Yes.
Why'd you destroy them?
I don't know they would have been of any use to anyone else. They were just little talking points for me. We went through every single thing on my notes. It was on videotape, and then I got rid of the notes.
So when you were on the videotape, you were reading your notes?
Well, I was using them as prompts to remember to talk about each thing. The investigator guided the interview, so sometimes we didn't stick straight to them, but I made sure everything on the note got discussed with investigators.
But we wouldn't know that because we can't see him today, right?
No, but you can watch the videotape of my interview with Craig Iserman and see what's on the notes.
Oh, I can see the writing on that videotape?
I guess not, but that's the material that was covered.
Sir, truth is, you destroyed those notes, and we can't review them, right?
Yes.
No further questions.
Redirect, Ms. Kappelman.
Was there any law or instruction from a law enforcement officer requiring you to do something with your personal notes?
No, I don't think I even needed to create notes. I chose to organize my thoughts to talk to Investigator Isom, but it was to help me make sure I covered what I wanted to cover. And of course, he ended up asking most of the questions anyway. That's how it works.
And everything in the notes is included in the interview?
Yes.
It was provided to us?
Yeah.
Okay, nothing further. Thank you.
You may step down, sir. Please call your next witness.
Brian Fitzpatrick.
You need to stay calm during this. Okay? If you have an issue, write it to Kate, and Kate will decide whether it comes to me. Because I need to hear it.
Mr. Fitzpatrick, please approach the witness stand.